Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Had Divine Reflection Powers of Adam from Record of Ragnarok Movie 1. Before we start, please go support 0302 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. Izuku, a boy who wants to live and is involved in situations that will be dangerous for the simple fact of wanting to protect the love of his life. Chapter 1. In an era that was full of heroes and villains after the appearance of the powers, most people in their childhood wanted to be heroes, and although most wanted to be, not everyone can be, since not all quirks, gifts or powers were made to be a hero, like the number 1 hero and symbol of peace, All Might. We can't find what is a city which is well known for having in it the most famous school of heroes in the world, which is the UA. This city is Muzudafu, a city in which our protagonist lives, which at this moment we can see him, who is 4 years old, and is sitting under a tree while eating an apple, which after each bite he appreciates it for a while, and then takes another bite of it. Next to him at this moment was a girl who, like him, was 4 years old, and had jet black hair, who was reading a book while eating chocolate, and from time to time she looked at Izuku. This girl was called Momo Yaoyorozu, and she met Izuku one day when he saved her from some boys who were bothering her just because she was from the Yaoyorozu family. Momo, hey Izuku, have you awakened your quirk? Nate answered his friend Izuku's question and just turned to look at her, and raised his shoulders as if he didn't know the answer to her question, which made a drop of sweat appear on Momo's head at Izuku's disinterest. Momo, aren't you interested in knowing what your quirk is? Izuku, a quirk won't change who I am, so no. Momo, but you don't want to be a hero. Izuku, I just want to protect my loved ones and live a life in peace, and if I can find the infinite Garden of Eden. Momo, the Garden of Eden doesn't exist, or does it? Izuku, it doesn't, but I don't need it to exist to create one. Momo, I see, but aren't you interested in being a hero? Izuku, leaving the subject aside, you already got your quirk. Momo, yes, my quirk is amazing. Izuku, what is it? Momo, I can create things if I know their chemical composition. After saying that, Momo created a block of wood. Izuku, I see. Momo, it's incredible. With this maybe I can be a great heroine. Izuku, yes. Momo, hey Izuku, my parents wanted to meet you. Izuku, meet me? Momo, yes, they said they wanted to meet the boy she was always playing with. Izuku, I see. Momo, that's why they want to invite you to dinner tomorrow. Izuku, I'll ask, and if I can I'll go. Momo, thanks Izuku. Izuku, also, today I'm going to see the doctor to see if I have a quirk, so tomorrow I'll tell you what it is. Momo, yes, I hope it's a strong one. Izuku, yes. Momo, you don't sound excited. Izuku, I plan to have a quiet life, so it doesn't matter much what kind of quirk I have. Momo, then we won't be together when I'm a hero. Izuku, maybe not, but when you enter UA I will probably also be alone in general courses. After all, being a prestigious school will help me get a job. Momo, great, so we can spend more time together. Izuku, yes. After a while in which Izuku and Momo spent time together doing their respective things, they separated in order to return home. After Izuku arrived home, his mother called him, and together with her, after eating something, they left the house in the direction of the hospital, where they waited for about 5 minutes upon arrival and were then called by the doctor, who performed the necessary tests on Izuku to find out what his quirk was. After the exams, Izuku and Inko were sitting waiting for the answers to the exam that Izuku took. When the doctor arrived in the room, he told them that Izuku did have a quirk, which highlighted Inko, who looked at Izuku, who had the same expression he always had, a calm one. Inko, doctor, do you know what Izuku's quirk is? Doctor, well no, this quirk is not known, so it is a new one, so Izuku. Izuku, tell me. Doctor, when you find out what your quirk does, you can tell me. Izuku, upon hearing this, did not respond. He only gave a smile, which the doctor took as a yes, to which he let them leave the room, to which Inko began to talk to Izuku while they were heading towards her house. Inko, when you find out what your quirk is, tell me so I can take you to the doctor so you can tell him, okay? Izuku, no thanks. Inko, But the doctor asked you to. Izuku. But I didn't confirm that I would do it. Inko. Yes, you did, Izuku. Izuku. I just smile at him, I never confirmed. Inko. Ha, well, okay, but you will tell me the truth. Izuku. Of course. Inko. Well, that's good for you. Hands, as soon as we get home, you're going to go to bed so you won't wake up late for school tomorrow. Izuku. Yes, Mom. The next day Izuku was woken up by his mother, who told him to get ready to go to school, to which Izuku began to prepare to be able to go to school. After Izuku arrived at his school, he met his friend Katsuki Bakugo, who was with other boys while showing off his quirk, which was to explode things, to which Izuku just looked at him for a while, where he began to feel like his eyes were burning, but after a while that burning stopped, and he just left without paying much more attention to Bakugo. After all, although they were friends, they were not as close as he was with Momo. The bad thing about being at that school is that his friend was not with him, to which they could only meet her in the park, in which most of the time they met. After classes were over, Izuku went home, where he explained to his mother about his invasion of his friend's dinner, to which Inko did not want to accept, but after Izuku's insistence, she let him go on the condition that he did not arrive home so late, to which Izuku accepted. And after eating he went to the park, where he always met Momo while carrying an apple in his hand. After Izuku arrived at the park, where as always he met Momo, who was trying to get Izuku to play with her, which Izuku didn't want since he just wanted to rest as always, which was making Momo angry. Momo. Izuku, let's play. Izuku. I don't want to. Momo. Izuku. Izuku, no. Momo. Izuku. Izuku, no. Momo, come on, Izuku. While saying that, Momo was letting out some fake tears which were so realistic that Izuku thought they were real. Izuki, okay. Momo, yes. After Izuku sighed, he played with Momo, with whom after a while he headed to his house, where he only arrived when he was received by Momo's parents, whom Izuku greeted in the most formal way possible. Momo's parents greeted him, and then led him and his daughter to the dining room, where some butlers were serving the food. After a while in which Izuku and Momo's parents were talking, Momo talked about his dreams of becoming a hero, which made his parents shake their heads and start lecturing him about how it wasn't a very good idea. Which made Momo sad. After a while Momo's parents were telling her that they didn't want her to be a heroine because of the danger, and other things, which was making Momo very sad, to which Izuku, when he saw it, interrupted Momo's parents. Izuku, don't worry about the danger. Father, explained child. Izuku, you shouldn't worry about the danger. I plan to protect her, so don't worry about the danger, because I will do everything possible to make her dream come true. After saying that, Momo's father stared into his eyes, which was returned by Izuku, who did not waver in his gaze, continuing with his calm gaze, which after a while made Momo's father stop his hard gaze. Father, okay Izuku, I will believe you, and I hope you protect my daughter. Izuku, I will do it with my life. After Izuku digested that, Momo hugged him, and after he did that she quickly separated while she was completely red, which made Izuku let out a small laugh. After that, Momo's parents talked more than with Izuku and his daughter. After a few hours, Izuku said goodbye and left Momo's house, but before he left, Momo's father spoke to him. Father boy, I hope you keep your promise and protect my daughter. When Izuku heard it, he just gave her a smile and left, and while he was walking he heard how his friend was yelling at his dad for what he said. After a while, Izuku arrived home, where he only greeted his mother, and went to his room, where he fell on his bed because of the tiredness he felt. Izuku, what'd I do to see her happy? While Izuku was saying that, he was thinking about what he had told Momo's father, so he wouldn't stop Momo from becoming a heroine. Time skip 11 years. 3 In those last years Izuku learned what his quirk was, which he discovered after he got into a fight to protect Momo, and although he had already come to feel it before, he never got to activate it. When he activated it, you could only see a small change in his eyes, which could copy everything he wanted, even the quirks of other people, but only to counterattack. Since he did not learn the quirk of the person he saw, what he could do was copy it for a moment, and then use it, and then lose it until he sees it again. Note: oh well, what I mean is that he doesn't stay in power. It is only to give the blow the foolishness of his enemy. I put it like that so that he is not so up. The moment Naruto activated his power, he noticed how everything slowed down, and he noticed how he could see different movements which he could do as if he could see the future which he used to win the battle and in that way make sure that he would never bother Momo again, which after she saw how Izuku won she hugged him and began to thank him for helping her, but after a few minutes she began to scold Izuku for getting into a fight and being in danger. After a few years passed, Izuku and Momo separated because Momo no longer went to the park they always went to, and that made Izuku somewhat depressed for a while. But after a while he was able to move forward, which made him not think about Momo as much anymore. At this moment Izuku was in class where he was calmly looking at the teacher who was talking about how they would be great heroes until the moment came when the teacher said how Bakugo was applying to take the UA exam, to which all the students were impressed, to which Bakugo began to say things like he was the best and how arrogant he was until he fell silent at the moment when the teacher also said that Izuku was also applying to the UA, which made Bakugo angry and approached Izuku, who activated his quirk which he called the Eyes of God or the Eyes of the Lord. So at the moment when Bakugo was going to give his explosive attack, this Izuku dodged it without taking damage, and although he copied his power and could have used it against Bakugo, he did not use it since none of his classmates knew that he had a quirk. After Izuku dodged the blow, he walked away from Bakugo and then calmly left the classroom with his backpack, which he had grabbed before dodging Bakugo's attack. After doing that he left a very angry Bakugo, which did not matter to Izuku, who went home, where as soon as he arrived home Izuku greeted his mother, and then began to find out when the UA exam would be, to which when he found out it would be in 9 months Izuku began to think about what he would do in that time. Izuku, train? What do I need to train? After Izuku lay in his bed thinking about whether he will train and if he decides to go in and train, he fell asleep from thinking so much. Chapter 2. Time skipped 9 months. In these 9 months that passed, Izuku trained his body a bit, and also trained his quirk, with which he discovered that although he could not stay with the quirks he saw, what he could do was stay with everything else, like movements, and everything that was not done by a quirk. Apart from that, Izuku did nothing but enjoy the tranquility which he knew he would no longer have the moment he went to UA, and the truth is he no longer knew why he was going to enter the hero course. After all, he wouldn't believe that Momo would remember him, or rather that she would remember his promise. At this moment Izuku was walking to UA, since on this day the exams to enter the hero course would be given, to which he was confident that he would pass. After all, he always had good grades in school. The moment Izuku arrived at UA he entered it, and went to the place where his first exam would be given, which was written, which after it finished he waited for others to finish so he could hand in his exam, to which while others still hadn't handed in the exam he stayed there pretending as if he hadn't finished yet. When several boys got up to hand in their exams, Izuku got up with them and handed it in, and then left the room and went to where the second exam would be, which after it was explained to him what they were going all. A door opened, in which as soon as it opened, everyone stood still waiting for a signal, which Izuku only saw as a fool, to which he alone walked calmly inside the doors, to which the others looked at him strangely. While that was happening, Mike was on his cell phone, and had not noticed that anyone had left. After a few minutes he turned to see and found that most of them were still there, while inside the city there was a boy who was destroying robots with a metal bar, to which Mike presented it. "Present, Mike, what are the heroes waiting for? They don't have a countdown." After they said that, everyone ran out, and the moment they entered they found themselves in a massacre of robots, and in Izuku on top of several pieces of rubble and several pieces of robots lying down, which made several angry, since it could be seen that Izuku made a massacre of robots which left few for the others. While that was happening in a room with cameras, several teachers were talking about the students. Among them they talked about Bakugo, who was destroying the robots. Among those who were talking, Izuku's name came up. All Might, they know what the boy's quirk is. Aizawa, it's not registered, but he called it the Eyes of God. Midnight, the name is a bit arrogant, don't you think? Aizawa, if he could do it, he must have a reason. After all, the boy doesn't seem arrogant. All right, that boy has a face of complete tranquility. Nizu, well, let's see what they can do against this. After saying that, Nizu pressed the red button, which made the ground where the participants were start to shake, which made everyone be on guard until after a while a giant robot came out, and everyone started running like crazy. Seeing this, Izuku simply got up from his pile of rubble and began to walk towards the exit so as not to be harmed by the robot. But even though he would have wanted to do that, after he heard some muffled sounds, he looked in a certain direction where he found a girl who was buried in rubble. To which he approached her as quickly as possible and tried to get her out, which after great effort he managed to do. After that, Izuku picked her up and started taking her away as fast as possible. Izuku, tell me what your quirk is. Uraraka, well, I can make the gravity of something or someone no longer exist. I can control it. Izuku, if you can use it on yourself, do it, and even my light ones. Uraraka, hearing him, did what he asked, but what she didn't notice was that Izuku's eyes changed somewhat, and he was watching her as she used her quirk, to which he noticed that there were some of his classmates in front of him, so Izuku whistled at them, which caught the attention of those boys, who turned to see, to which Izuku threw Uraraka at them, who for a moment gave a small scream. When Izuku saw that they caught her, Izuku turned around with her eyes activated and began to walk towards the robot, which continued walking in her direction. After a few steps, the robot was about to crush Izuku, but Izuku, as quickly as he could, got out of the way of the robot's foot, which the moment it touched the ground made everything around it shake. But that didn't matter to Izuku, who as quickly as he could approached the robot and used the quirk of the girl he had helped with, which he was able to make the robot start to levitate, which was causing Izuku to start bleeding a little from his eyes due to the great effort he was making. After a few seconds in which the robot stood up, Izuku stopped using his quirk, which caused the robot to fall to the ground, and since he was levitating, he fell on his back, which caused several parts of him to become useless, which meant that he could no longer do anything. While that was happening, Izuku was kneeling on the ground with one of his eyes closed, while you could see some blood coming out of both of them. After a few minutes, a very old lady arrived next to him and asked him if he was okay, to which Izuku stood up and just nodded before starting to walk to the exit, while he had his calm look as if nothing had happened, which impressed him. Several people who saw him, since they could see how blood had come out of his eyes. After a while, Izuku left the school and began to leave the place, but was stopped by a voice, to which Izuku turned to see and noticed that it was the girl he helped. Uraraka, thanks for saving me. Izuku, you're welcome. After saying that, Izuku continued on his way, and after a while he arrived at his house, where he welcomed his mother, who was making food, so he just went to the bathroom and cleaned his face since there were still traces of blood on it. After doing that, he left the bathroom and went to where his mother was, because he loved her and wanted to tell her that he was going to leave the house. At that moment, she told him that it was okay for Izuku to leave the house, and he began to head to the park where he used to play with Momo. Upon arriving, Izuku went to where he always went. When he arrived, he alone lay down in the tree where he always did and began to enjoy the peace that was in that place. After Izuku stayed there for a while, he began to think about his life, what he had done, and what he will do. After a few hours passed, Izuku got up and went home, where upon arriving he ate with his mother, and he said that he was almost sure that he would enter the UA, to which his mother got excited. Time skip 5 days. After 5 days passed, Izuku received a letter from the UA in which there was a hologram which informed him about his approval for the group of heroes, and that he would be in room 1A, and that his clothes would be sent to him, and after he told him that the device that showed the hologram would explode. To which Izuku did not give much importance. After all, the explosion was small, so it did not destroy anything. After a day passed, his school uniform arrived, and he had to wait until the next day, which was Monday, for his first day at school. The day after Izuku was given his uniform, he was already at UA, as he had arrived very early to see more or less how long it would take to get from his house to UA, to try to never be late. When Izuku entered the academy, he began to look for his classroom, which was not easy because of the size of the academy. When he found his classroom, he entered it, and only found a guy with glasses who raised his hand and introduced himself as Tenya Lida, to which Izuku formally introduced himself to him. After they introduced themselves, Izuku just stayed quiet and sat down in a seat to just have some of the peace he always liked to have for as long as possible. After a few seconds, Izuku took out an apple which he started to eat. After a few minutes, the other students began to enter the classroom, which were completely ignored by Izuku since he was focused on his apple. While he was eating his apple and still not paying attention to his surroundings, his old childhood friend Momo came in, and when she saw him, she got excited. But after seeing him eat his apple, she reminded him of how she had abandoned him and hadn't he seen him in years, which made her somewhat sad, and she decided not to talk to Izuku, who continued eating his apple calmly until an old acquaintance came in who started saying things out loud about how he was the best, and while he was saying it he let out some explosions, but the moment he saw Izuku he started to curse Izuku, who looked at him out of the corner of his eye and began to activate his eyes for a possible attack, which wasn't so strange since after a few more screams from Bakugo he launched himself at Izuku, who dodged Bakugo's attack by jumping from his seat to the teacher's desk where he sat. Izuku Katsuki, as reckless as ever. Bakugo, shut up you damn Quirkless. Izuku, just because I haven't shown you my quirk doesn't mean I don't have one. While saying that, the girl whom Izuku saved yesterday came through the door. Upon seeing Izuku, she greeted him and approached Izuku. Upon seeing that Bakugo was also coming with an explosion, he hugged the girl and pointed his arm at Bakugo, who received an explosion that sent him to the wall. When the smoke cleared, it revealed to Bakugo, who was upset and surprised as he looked at Izuku, who was asking Uraraka if she was okay, to which she blushed and answered yes. Izuku, you should be more careful. Bakugo, you could have hurt her. Bakugo, it's round face's fault for getting in my way. Izuku, you will never learn. Before Bakugo could answer anything, the boy who had arrived before Izuku approached him and began to give him a sermon. Izuku, with his quirk already deactivated, just turned to see Uraraka, who was looking at him. Izuku, what's wrong? Uraraka, what is your quirk? Izuku, upon hearing her, just closed his eyes and gave her a very small smile. Izuku, it's a secret. God, Izuku digested that and opened his eyes, revealing his calm and neutral face, with which he brought his hand closer to Uraraka's face and put one of his fingers on her forehead. Izuku, go sit down, the teacher has arrived. After saying that, the door opened and he noticed some smoke in the place, to which he was going to ask what happened, but then he just let it pass. Seeing Professor Uraraka with a red tone on her cheeks, she walked away from Izuku, who, like her, went to his seat. While that was happening, they were both seen by Momo, who had a pout on her face. Momo, unfaithful. After some explanations from Aizawa, he told them that they would do some exercises, to which he took them outside the classroom where only Aizawa could come out and explain to them what their tests would be, to which in the first test, which was to throw a ball, he asked Izuku who would be the first on the entrance exam points table to throw the ball, to which Izuku did it with his normal strength, which made the ball reach 100 meters, which was not a big deal, to which Bakugo shouted uselessly, which Izuku ignored and left the launching area. Izuku, the master was using his quirk on me, but I still felt the power to use my quirk, which means that my eyes can't stop. They are more than I think. I haven't discovered their full potential yet. After everyone took the other tests, after Aizawa threatened that whoever came in last would be expelled. After the results were given, Izuku was in the center of the results, letting it be known that he was neither good nor bad, which left Aizawa with doubts since he still did not know what his quirk was, which he asked him in front of everyone. Aizawa, Izuku Midoriya, what is your quirk? Izuku, it's called the Eyes of God, or at least that's what I called it. Aizawa, why didn't you use it during the tests? Izuku, it requires a lawsuit to use, so I can't use it much, would you believe it? So I only use it in special cases. Aizawa, I see he's lying to me. He used them in the classroom, and it seemed normal that he wants to hide. Uraraka, Izuku, what your eyes do? Izuku, well, just think about his name, it's kind of poetic after all. After Izuku digested that, he no longer answered any questions about his quirk, which made everyone give up and stop asking him. Chapter 3. After Izuku went to his classroom, since these classes had already ended, he and his classmates only received the classes they had, which were only about subjects which Izuku found boring, but that did not stop Izuku from being scolded for anything, since even though he was bored he did not stop paying attention. After all, knowledge is knowledge and knowledge is power. After all, without knowledge you can do nothing. And before that Izuku continued paying attention until classes ended, to which Izuku, while he was leaving his classroom, he found himself stopped by Uraraka, who asked him where he was going, to which Izuku mentioned the place where he was going, and before that Uraraka asked him if She could walk with him, to which Izuku accepted, and before that Lita also wanted to go with them. After all, he wanted the three of them to be friends. While the conversation was taking place from a distant seat, Momo looked at Izuku with a pout since she also wanted to go with him. And what she was thinking was that hitch called Uraraka wanted to take her Izuku away from her. But while she was still in her thoughts, she didn't realize that Izuku and his small group left the place in the direction of the exit, to which the moment Momo stopped thinking about the hatred she had against Uraraka without taking into account the existence of Lita, she ran out to be able to catch up with Izuku and asked him for a moment to talk. Which she had hoped to be able to get. After all, Izuku was never someone who was aggressive or someone vengeful. After Momo ran following the steps that Izuku took on his way, he found that they were about to leave the UA, to which Momo did not come up with a better idea than to shout with all her strength the name of Izuku, which when he heard it he turned to look at her, to which Momo, seeing that he was looking at her, blushed and hurriedly approached him as quickly as possible to grab him by the arm and asked for a moment to talk, to which Izuku only responded with a nod, while to his two friends he told them that he could not go with them this time, to which Lita understood, but you could see how Uraraka had her cheeks inflated while looking with daggers at Momo, which had a look towards Uraraka of victory, which Izuku did not notice. But after Izuku moved Momo from the entrance and moved away from her to be in a more private place, he asked her, "Izuku, what do you need?" "Momo, Izuku, I." Before finishing her words, Momo hugged him and began to cry, which left Izuku somewhat bewildered, who just stared at her. "Momo, I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm sorry for walking away from you, I'm sorry for leaving you, I'm sorry for everything." Hearing her, Izuku just continued looking at Kono for a moment until he returned the hug, which made Momo hug him tighter. "Momo, I don't want to be away from you again." Izuku just continued hugging her without saying a word, but he had a distant look as he was thinking about what Momo was telling him, to which after a few minutes of Momo and Izuku hugging each other, the two separated when they heard a cough, to which the two looked at the place coming from it, and met the driver who was driving the car in which Momo always went. "Izuku, Alfred, nice to see you again." Note: reference. You know, sometimes I think that if I don't put this word after a reference, some people don't understand it. "Alfred, Izuku, it's nice to see you again, but I have to take Miss Yaoyorozu home because her parents will be worried about her being late." "Izuku, you can say hello to them for me." "Momo, but I don't want to separate from you." Izuku just looked at Momo for a moment, and gave her a small smile. "Izuku, I would also like you to tell him that I have not forgotten our agreement." Alfred, hearing this, just like Izuku, gave a small smile. "Alfred, okay, young Izuku, I'll do as you ask." "Izuku, thanks Alfred, I have one more request." "Alfred, what is it, young Izuku?" "Izuku, help me get rid of Momo." Hearing Izuku, Alfred looked at how Momo was hugging Izuku further while making a kind of screech. Seeing that, Alfred began to try to remove Momo, who was hugging Izuku, who was pushing her to stop doing it. "Alfred, miss, you aren't a cat, stop making those sounds." "Momo, I don't want to leave Izuku." "Alfred, miss, leave it." "Izuku, you have to go home, we'll see each other tomorrow." Momo, hearing that, looked at Izuku with tearful eyes while continuing to hug him. "Momo, promise me that we'll see each other tomorrow." "Izuku, yes, and how could we not do it? We are in the same class." "Momo, Izuku." "Izuku, what's wrong?" "Momo, I." Before she could continue saying anything, she just said it to Izuku, which made Alfred take advantage and let go of Momo, who again tried to hug Izuku, but he separated and Momo couldn't grab him, which made Izuku just start waving at her with his hand like this, saying goodbye. "Momo, no, 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 let me, Izuku, let them take me." "Izuku, Momo, are you going home?" "Momo, kidnap me, Izuku." Izuku, upon hearing that, just rolled his eyes at what they were asking him to do. "Alfred, it was a pleasure to see you again, young Izuku." "Izuku, the pleasure is all mine, Alfred." "Momo, don't ignore me, Izuku." "Izuku, have a good trip." While saying that, Izuku watched as Alfred put Momo in the car, to which Izuku just sighed and then watched as Alfred got into the car and started it. Seeing that, Izuku couldn't help but give a small smile at what had happened and then left in the direction of his house. While Izuku was walking in the car that Momo was in, you could see how she was looking towards where the Yue was with some anger while muttering things like, "Izuku traitor," and more things like, "Why didn't you kidnap me?" "Alfred, miss, you shouldn't be like this, you will see young Izuku again tomorrow." "Momo, but I wanted to continue with him today." "Alfred, you can confess tomorrow, miss." "Momo, I wasn't going to confess, don't get any weird ideas." "Alfred, miss, you should be more honest with what you wanted to tell her." "Momo, wait, did you know what I would say?" Hearing that, Alfred just remained silent. "Momo, you knew what I would say and you interrupted me." Momo said this with a completely angry face which showed Alfred how angry she was with him, to which Alfred just started to ignore Momo, who continued to look at him angrily. Time skip one day. The next day after Momo and Izuku met, Momo couldn't stop looking at Izuku even in class, which made her receive a scolding from Aizawa several times, who couldn't help but look strangely at how Momo was looking at Izuku. After all, it was the same as yesterday, but today Momo was doing it more, which gave Aizawa the doubt of whether Momo Yaoyorozu was harassing Izuku, and in the face of that possibility, Aizawa was looking at the possibility of talking to Momo about the acid issue to give her a sermon on why it wasn't okay, and in the face of that he was beginning to prepare everything in his mind of what he would do, and for that, Aizawa was thinking about talking to Midnight, since possibly she would know more how to talk to her about that. After a while of classes, Aizawa told everyone that they would have a class where they would have a different teacher, and at that everyone wondered who the teacher would be, to which Aizawa just left the classroom in search of Midnight, while All Might entered in a rather unusual way, saying something like, "I'm entering as a normal person." Something that at the moment Izuku saw him he didn't find anything normal. After All Might did that and gave them the information about the hero class and that they would have 2 versus 2 fights, he pressed a button which made briefcases come out where their suits should be. After that All Might told them all to go change, to which they began to move in the direction of the locker rooms. Where they just arrived they began to do what was ordered, but after Minera found a small hole where she could look at her classmates, Izuku just punched her in the face, which sent her crashing into a wall where she stayed there unconscious while Izuku went back to cover the hole that was in the wall, to then continue with what he was doing at the end after everyone came out and were together with All Might to start their class. The only one missing was Izuku, who after some time passed came out showing that he only had the lower part of a suit, which were white pants at the same time as boots of that same color, while the upper part did not have any clothing other than a mask like Kakashi's of white color, which he did not have on, since in one of his hands he had an apple which he was eating. Izuku, all set, All Might. While Izuku was saying that, he wasn't noticing the looks that 2 of his companions were giving him, which were Uraraka and Momo, who were looking at Izuku while some drool was coming out of their mouths when they saw that Izuku didn't have a shirt or anything covering the upper part of his body. After All Might started walking with his students and Momo approached Izuku, she asked Izuku about his outfit. "Izuku, you don't like it?" "Momo, what? No, I never said that, don't change it, I mean it's not necessary, ha ha ha." "Izuku, I found it more comfortable not to have a shirt when I'm fighting, that's why the suit." "Momo, I see." While saying that I was looking into the distance as Uraraka kept looking at Izuku, while he looked into her eyes, which Uraraka noticed with a very sweet smile, she began to talk to her. "Momo, stay away, it's mine." Seeing that, Uraraka and Momo put on a sweet smile. "Uraraka, we'll see." After they arrived at an area where there were cameras, All Might began to tell her about the test, to which several took some balls that had names from a box which let them know if they would be villains or heroes and also who they would be on a team with. To which when it was Izuku's turn he touched Uraraka, who looked at Momo with a winning face, who couldn't help but crush Izuku's apple a little, which he had given her since she was going to grab the ball. After Uraraka looked at Momo with a winning face, she approached Izuku and hugged him. "Uraraka, come on Izuku-kun, let's make a plan, what do you think about that?" "Izuku, sure." "Momo, damn, we'll see how long your happiness lasts." Chapter 4. After several teams passed, Izuku and Uraraka were next, who were against Bakugo and Lita. After a while, All Might gave the starting signal, and Uraraka and Izuku entered the building where they had to find the bomb in order to win. "Uraraka, if you think Bakugo will come for us." "Izuku, Their attempt to attack will be inevitable, but whoever comes will be an advantage for us. Just follow the plan and we will be fine. Uraraka, okay, Izuku-kun. After they spent some time walking, they found that they could hear several explosions, to which Izuku looked at Uraraka. Izuku, I told you so. After he said that, Izuku threw Uraraka to the ground, keeping him on top of her, who was very red while her eyes began to spin because of the position they were in, and what her mind was thinking at the moment. Izuku, okay Uraraka, you just have to go, she will stay with me. Uraraka, well Izuku. After Izuku digested that, he stood next to Uraraka, who ran away from the place. While Izuku and Bakugo were staring at each other. Bakugo, damn it, I'll kill you. After he digested that, he launched himself towards Izuku, who just looked at him calmly at the moment. When Bakugo was going to give his explosion to Izuku, he took him by the hand to put it on his shoulder, and thus throw him to the ground. After he did that, Izuku just jumped back a little, which was necessary since Bakugo gave an explosion in Izuku's direction which didn't affect him because of how far away he was. Izuku, you know Bakugo, using your quirk in a closed area is not a very good idea. Bakugo, why do you say that, idiot? Izuku, hearing him, just pointed up at Bakugo, to which the moment he did a rock fell on his face which made him very angry, but before he could say anything or look at Izuku, he felt a blow to his face, and then felt how someone grabbed him by the shoulders, and then felt how they put a foot behind his legs and applying force on his shoulders they threw him to the ground, where as soon as he fell to the ground he could notice how Izuku looked at him until he felt how they took him by one of his hands while they had the other one stepped on. Izuku, one move and I'll break your hand. I got that. Izuku said that those who were watching the fight from the monitor room were impressed by how fast everything had happened. Izuku, Uraraka, can you hear me? Uraraka, yes, Izuku-kun, what's happening? Izuku, first part of the mission accomplished. Uraraka, okay, Izuku-kun, I'll do what I can. Izuku, luck. After Izuku said that, Uraraka looked at how Lita was acting stupid, and he couldn't help but laugh, which made Lita able to find her. While that was happening, Izuku was talking to Bakugo. Izuku, you know we can make a deal. Bakugo, damn, what do you want? Izuku, if I let you go, you won't attack me and we'll just sit there looking at the area that seems to you. Bakugo, okay. Izuku, aha, you believed it. Bakugo, damn bastard. Izuku, I would give the opportunity to others, but the truth is I don't trust you. After some time passed, all you could hear was the building's microphones turning on, and All Might saying that the heroes had won, and at that, Izuku let go of Bakugo's hand and then started to leave the place. After Izuku left the building, a little bird perched on one of his shoulders. Izuku, hello little one. The bird, upon hearing it, just started singing and then flew away while Izuku arrived at the monitor room, where as soon as he entered he started receiving glances from his classmates, and at that Izuku just passed by without any concern. Until his classmates arrived, which were Bakugo, Lita and Uraraka, who just by seeing him hugged him, earning the anger of Momo, who was going to say something, but All Might spoke to tell them that since they were the last team that would participate, they would begin to retreat to their classrooms so that they could continue with their classes, and at that everyone did as they were told. While the students of Class 1A of the UA were returning to their classroom in an unknown place which looked like a tavern, there were several villains talking, which were talking to a television which was off, or so it seemed. Shigaraki, then that's what we'll do. After I said that, it was noticed that the television began to show the silhouette of a face. AFO, okay, Shigaraki, get as much information as possible, and if you can, try to give suspicion so that people think someone has betrayed them. Shigaraki, yes master. While that was happening in the area where the villains were at UA, they were doing nothing but waiting for classes to end so they could go home, which they could do in a few minutes since they were about to finish classes. After several minutes passed, the bell that announced the end of classes rang, which made all the students start to go their separate ways in the direction of their house, which was something that was happening with Izuku, Momo and Uraraka, who asked Izuku to walk with her. After all, she had promised him, and before that Izuku couldn't say no. Time skipped one day after a day passed in which Izuku had his first class with All Might, He found that at the moment he was going to enter the UA, it was completely full of reporters who, upon seeing him, approached him to ask him about All Might. Reporter 1, is it true that All Might teaches classes? Reporter 2, is he good at teaching All Might? Reporter 3, what clothes does he wear? Reporter 1, do you have a girlfriend? Reporter 2, are you happy with the classes they give you? Izuku, upon hearing them, just started looking at each reporter while answering their questions. Izuku, yes, I don't know, no, yes, having said that, goodbye. After I said that, Izuku started moving between the reporters so he could get to the UA. In which I noticed that there was some commotion by the reporters. After all, there were several teachers asking them to leave the place, which was not heard by them, who continued asking questions which were not answered by anyone. At the moment when one of the reporters tried to go beyond the doors of the U.A, some metal doors stopped them, which scared them a little, but after seeing that it was the security of the UA, they left. While that was happening, Izuku arrived at his classroom where all his classmates were already, which only left his teacher without arriving, who arrived a few minutes later, who had a serious face and mentioned that they would do a special activity, which he said made almost all the students nervous. Aizawa, the activity will be the one where they will have to elect a class representative. At that, most of them had a drop of sweat on their heads. After all, it was a normal class activity. But after they thought about it, and everyone offered themselves as a possible candidate, and after making a lot of fuss, Lida gave the idea of holding votes in which Izuku and Momo won as a substitute, which made Lida somewhat depressed. After they were doing the representative elections, everyone went out to eat something in the cafeteria where they could only arrive and be there for a while, the UA. Alarms were activated which made the students alert, but at the moment Izuku noticed that it was the reporters who had activated it. He asked Lomo if he could give him a megaphone, which he was granted, and with the device he spoke so that everyone could hear them. Izuku, calm down, it's just the reporters. After he said that, he grabbed the megaphone and threw it at Mineta, who was about to touch the body of a girl, which was stopped by the blow of Izuku's flying megaphone, which hit him in the face. Unbeknownst to any of them, the alarm at the U.A was not caused by the reporters but by some villains who had entered the U.A in search of information that could be of use to them, but that was something that the students did not have. Thought it would happen, not even the teachers knew. But the moment the break was over and everyone returned to their classrooms, Professor Aizawa told them about his trip to a U.A facility where they should train their methods to be able to help people who were caught in a disaster, whether natural or not. And although most were excited about this trip would take several days later. After Aizawa gave that information to his students, they were given all the rest of the classes as free time which they could use as they wanted with the condition of not making too much noise, which they all accepted, and the first to get up was Momo, who stood up. She sat on the same bench that Izuku was on, who only looked at her for a few seconds, and then looked back at his book which had "Momo, don't ignore me." While Momo was saying this, she hugged Izuku, who just continued with his book, but Momo was looking at him, while sometimes she sent a look to Uraraka so that she wouldn't try anything with Izuku. Momo, hey Izuku? Izuku, what's wrong? Momo, someday, I don't know, you might like to come back to my house to eat with me. Izuku, I have no problems. Momo, seriously. Izuku, I've done it before, what would be different? Hearing that, Momo lowered her head while speaking in whispers that were not heard by Izuku. Momo, well now we are older and well now it would be more like a date for you to meet my parents and well. Izuku, I can't hear you Momo. Momo, what I didn't say anything haha. While Momo was saying that she was moving her hands back and forth but her words were stopped by a purple dwarf who had a red mark on his face as if something had hit him. Mineta, why? Izuku, why what? Mineta, because you have the damn luck that Momo likes you. Izuku. Mineta, not only that, but you are popular with the girls. I noticed what the reporter at the outing asked you. Izuku. Mineta, answer me. Izuku, Momo, when would be what you asked me? Mineta, don't ignore me. Momo, well, what do you think about this afternoon? Izuku, okay, I'll go. Mineta, seeing how they ignored him, was stretching Izuku's shirt, who followed him without paying attention. Mineta, come on, answer me because he likes you. Izuku, what is that? Saying that, he pointed towards the window, which everyone started to look at to find out what Izuku was talking about, but they didn't see anything, so they turned to where Izuku was, and he had disappeared. Not even Momo knew where he was. But while Izuku's classmates were left thinking about what happened, Izuku had left the classroom and was walking through the halls of the UA, where while he was walking he met a blue-haired girl who was carrying a lot of papers, to which he approached her and took more than half of the papers. Nijire, thank you for your help. Izuku, it's no problem, tell me where you're going. After Nijire told him where he had to walk, Izuku accompanied her, carrying the papers to help her. Nijire, by the way, are you a new student? Are you a first year? What is your quirk? Do you have a girlfriend? What is your name? What class are you in? What teacher do you have? Izuku, after listening to several of his questions, stopped them since he couldn't answer all of them if he kept asking them. Izuku, my name is Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is called God's Eyes. Yes, I'm a first year. No, I don't have a girlfriend. I'm in class 1A. My teacher is Aizawa. Nijire, haha, sorry for the questions. Izuku, okay. Nijire, by the way, we're here and thank you very much for helping me. Izuku, it was a pleasure. Nijire, before I forget, it's a pleasure. My name is Nijire Adu, son of 3. Izuku, I see, Nijire senpai. Nijire, upon hearing this, just shook her head. Nijire, call me Nijire-chan. Izuku, Nijire-san. Nijire, Nijire-chan. Izuku, Nijire. Nijire, Nijiri-chan. Izuku, Nijire-chan. Nijire, perfect, well, I hope to see you again, Izuku-kun. While saying that, she had grabbed Izuku's hands, who only looked at her calmly as always. Nijire, okay, bye Izuku-kun. After she said that, she left the place, leaving Izuku alone, who no longer had anything in his hands and just started walking in a direction without any direction. Chapter 5. After several days had passed since Izuku was the Ehido as class representative, several things had happened. One of them was that he had met Nijire again several times, who introduced him to his friends, who were Tamaki and a guy who had a face like Tintin who was called Mirio, who was very lively. On this day, all the students of Class 1A were preparing, since they would go to the training trip that Aizawa told them about, which was prepared several days ago, which had all the students very excited. After all, it would be a different activity from their normal studies, in addition to the fact that they had more to do with the heroes, something for which everyone was in that place. But while everyone was quite excited, except for Izuku, who continued with its characteristic calmness. Izuku was completely calm, looking out of the bus window, looking at the landscape, but that admiration towards the landscape was interrupted by the question of one of his companions, more specifically the frog girl who was called Tsuyu. Tsuyu, I'm a person who likes to say what he thinks. Izuku, what's your quirk? Izuku, as I said before, it's called the Eyes of the Lord. Tsuyu, did you name them that? Izuku, yes. Tsuyu, why that name? Izuku, I also clarified it, you just have to think in a somewhat poetic way to understand its meaning. Tsuyu, no, you will tell us what it is about. Izuku, giving the answer to a riddle is pointless, don't you think? Before anyone else could say anything, the bus stopped and Professor Aizawa told them to get off, to which everyone obeyed, and the moment they did so they met another hero, who was Space Hero 13. Upon seeing them, he gave them a talk about how quirks could help and harm people, and that they were there for that purpose, where they would be trained to save people. But although they would have liked to continue, a type of purple mist or something like that appeared a little far from them, but in front of them, and several guys came out. To which 13 and Aizawa became somewhat tense, which Izuku noticed and became on guard. Mina, great, they even have fake villains. Aizawa, these aren't fake villains, so be on your guard. Izuku, leader, you have to get out of here and get help. Linda, I'm not going to leave them here. Izuku, if you don't go, there's less chance of survival. Before leader Aizawa could answer, he launched himself at the villains who came out while telling 13 to take care of the students, to which he agreed. Izuku, go Lida, you are the only thing we have as a chance to survive. Lida just looked down, and in a low voice said that she would return and then start running, and at that Izuku looked ahead where the mist was beginning to approach, which he introduced himself, and then presented what they wanted, and after Bakugo and Kirishima launched themselves to attack the mist, and that nothing would happen, he sent them all in different directions, which was somewhat annoying since it separated them, and on top of that he sent everyone together with villains so that they would eliminate them. But Izuku, before he could think a lot about what he could do to help, was dragged by Tsuyu's tongue to a ship in which she was with Mineta, who was very scared. Tsuyu, what are we going to do? Izuku, crouch down and wait. Mineta, what do you mean? Izuku, what did you hear? Before Mineta could ask more, Izuku put his foot on his head, causing him to be stuck to the ground, and asked Tsuyu to do the same, to which she accepted, to which Izuku activated his quirk and began to look at his enemies until one was stupid enough to activate a quirk in which he controlled water, to which Izuku did the same, making a giant whirlpool, in which the villains were, to which he began to grab the strange balls that Mineta had on his head and began to throw them towards the whirlpool, which was causing the villains to become trapped with each other. Izuku, okay, let's get out of here. Saying that, Tsuyu looked at Izuku while she was on the ground and could see how Mineta was bleeding from the head, while Izuku had one of his feet on her head and looked towards where the villains were, to which she got up and could only see the villains floating while they were all stuck together with each other and what Mineta could throw. Tsuyu, what happened? While she was thinking that, she was watching as Izuku was walking in the direction of the mainland where he just started to go to where his sensei should be, to which she was following him with Mineta. But when they were about to arrive, they could see how Aizawa was on the ground hurt, while the bird that was next to the mist before had its foot on top of his head, to which they were scared. But they became more scared when they saw that the blue-haired villain was about to grab Momo's head, which she had tears in her eyes as she watched how the villain with the hands approached her. But before that happened, they watched as Izuku disappeared, and after that they only saw how the head of the villain who was about to grab Momo was being grabbed by Izuku by the head, and after that they watched as Izuku used force, making Shigaraki's entire body be in the air, and after that be pinned against the ground while Izuku kept his hand on the villain's head. Izuku, for making my beloved cry, you don't deserve to be alive. Before Izuku could do anything else, he moved his head a little to the right, thus dodging a blow from the bird. Shigaraki, Noma, kill him. Hearing that, the bird known as Noma launched itself at Izuku, who only jumped back, dodging a Noma kick and then grabbing Momo by the waist. Shigaraki, how could you dodge it? Nomu is created to kill All Might, that should be impossible. As he said that, he looked at the boy who had hurt him, looking at him with eyes that gave him chills all over his body. Izuku, don't lose hope, I'm just a human, right? Only with the eyes of the Lord God gave me his best weapon. Before saying anything else, Izuku threw Momo to his side where Tsuyu was, who had just arrived, in order to dodge Noma's attack, who after launching that blow launched another one, which was also dodged by Izuku, who after dodging that one jumped back. After jumping back, he and Noma were in the same position, and at the same time, they both launched themselves, which came with a blow from Noma's right hand, which was dodged and returned by a blow from Izuku's left hand, which after giving that blow had to dodge a leg sweep from Noma, and while he was in the air, Izuku gave Noma a spinning kick, which he could feel as if his own strength was being used against him, which made him very strange. Shigaraki, Noma, finish him. Noma, hearing this, screamed and then launched himself at Izuku, to whom he began to throw a combination of punches, which first began with a right hook, followed by a left hook, and then a kick, which was aimed at the chest, but all of that was dodged by Izuku, who had only moved a few centimeters, and after that, Izuku launched his own combination, which began with a right hook, followed by a left hook, and then ended with a kick, which hit Noma in the stomach, who was thrown backwards by the force of Izuku, who looked at him neutrally. Shigaraki, what are you doing? Noma, kill him, stop playing. Izuku, listen, it's already here. After Izuku digested that, a wall shattered and showed All Might, who was angry seeing the situation. Shigaraki, seeing him, shouted at Noma to kill him, but when he looked at Noma he saw how he was being attacked by Izuku, who was kicking him in the head, which Noma tried to cover himself with, but Izuku used his leg to push himself on Noma's arm to be above him, to whom he threw an axe kick aimed at his skull, and although Nomu tried to dodge, which he achieved the moment Izuku touched the ground, he jumped to the side while doing a spin which he used to make force of inertia, which he used in a blow with which he hit Nomu in his ribs. Before anything else could happen, Izuku jumped back and Nomu revived a very strong blow from All Might which hit him in the face, which sent him flying, and Shigaraki, seeing that, gritted his teeth but didn't see how Izuku was approaching him trying to hit him in the face, which was stopped by Nomu, but he was hit in the ribs again, sent flying by All Might, who launched himself into a fight against Nomu, who was distracted by trying to save Shigaraki, who was being attacked by Izuku. The battle from beginning to end was seen by most of the UA albos, and even then they did not understand what Izuku's quirk was, since from what they saw it seemed to be super strength or physical enhancement. Shigaraki, after dodging another blow from Izuku, he walked away to try to think of what to do, but that attempt was stopped by a bullet which came from another hero who had arrived with several while they were next to Lita, but his observation was stopped by a blow to his stomach, which knocked the wind out of him from Izuku, who gave a spinning kick to his head, which made Shigaraki's head crash into the ground, but before he could say anything his body was recovered by the purple mist, which said goodbye and disappeared along with Shigaraki, but his Nomu was destroyed by All Might's blow, which was quite tired since he had received blows from Nomu. Izuku, after seeing how All Might destroyed Nomu, he began to walk towards Momo, who ran towards Izuku, who hugged her. Izuku was very scared. Izuku, upon hearing her, just hugged her tighter and began to caress her back in a comforting way so that she would stop being like that, although he knew that once she got over her shock she would be very attached to him because of what he had said. And at that, Izuku sighed while he continued to hug Momo, who, after Izuku also calmed down somewhat, deactivated his quirk, which made his eyes begin to shed some tears of blood. Izuku, I still don't have full control over it. After all the use of his quirk for a long time, the only thing he does is wear it out, and although he could use it for quite a long time, he was not lying to Aizawa when I said that his quirk required a cost, which was something he felt in his eyes, so he knew there were possibilities that if he overused his quirk he could go blind. Although it was only a possibility, or rather it was an assumption of what would happen if he exceeded his limits too much without having trained enough. But even though Izuku would like to be able to train his quirk, the only way to do it was to watch others fight and copy their quirks while they did it. After all, his eyes didn't give him that kind of problem if he just had them activated without doing anything. Chapter 6. After the ambulance arrived and took Aizawa away, the students were questioned about what had happened by the police officers who had arrived with the heroes, and after telling them what had happened, the police officers left, but the heroes stayed to protect the students on their way back to UA and also to see if Izuku was okay, since they could see blood coming out of his eyes, but they were reassured by Izuku's words, which let them know what happened if he overexerted himself with his quirk. After being there for a while, all the students were taken to the UA where they were allowed to go home, which made everyone furious. But while Izuku's other classmates went home, Izuku was trying to get Momo to stop hugging him. Izuku, you know you should go home. Momo, Izuku-kun doesn't want me to stay with him. Don't you want your beloved to continue hugging you? While Momo was saying that, she said it with a somewhat funny tone while she had a red tint on her face, which implied that she was somewhat embarrassed about it as well. Izuku, your parents can worry about you. Momo, Izuku and I will not separate from you. Izuku just sighed upon hearing her, to which Momo felt and hugged him tighter, while Izuku just looked in front of him waiting for Alfred to arrive at the entrance of the UA where he could help him with Momo. While the two were going through this, they were unaware of what was happening in the UA meeting room, where several professors were in the room discussing. Alright, then director thinks there may be a traitor. Nizu, exactly, otherwise how did they know you were going to the boys' training? Alright, but who could it be? Nizu, most likely it is a student, but we don't know which one. Alright, I can't agree with you on that assumption, director. Nizu, it's the most viable, although I have to say that the students of Class 1A stood out quite well in front of villains. While Nizu was saying that, he was showing how a camera that had survived showed how Izuku saved Momo from Shigaraki and fought against Momo. All Might, the young Izuku. Midnight, is his quirk still unknown? Nizu, yes, but I can assume that he copies the movements of his opponents. Midnight, how did you come to that conclusion? Nizu, If you look closely at the fight, you can see how young Izuku makes the same movements as that thing known as Noma. All Might, being able to copy movements, is his quirk. Nizu, no, it's not. All Might, what does it refer to? Nizu, I'm not sure why, but my senses tell me that's not all he can do, he's hiding his true power. All Might, why do you think I do it? Nizu, maybe it's because of the cost. Midnight cost? Nizu, as we could see, he was bleeding from his eyes after the fight, and you can see that he didn't receive any hits, which suggests that it is the cost of his quirk. But leaving aside the incredible show that young Izuku gave, we should continue with our traitor. After several days passed after everything that happened at UA with the attack of the villains, everything was big news in the media after the video of how Izuku fought against the villains was released, which began to make many people look at Izuku as a hero or an admirable person for what he did, while most girls saw him as if he were a piece of meat, and they were hungry wolves for what they saw and for hearing what he said after he saved Momo, although that apart from having that reaction had another reaction, which was jealousy towards Momo for Izuku. Momo's parents were surprised when they saw the video, although they didn't care about what Izuku had said, since according to them he was a good candidate for their daughter. After all, he had not only helped her fulfill her dream of entering the UA, but he had also kept his promise to protect Momo from whatever happened. According to Momo's parents, Izuku had their full support to be more than their daughter's friend. After all, the fact that he faced villains in front of them to protect their daughter was obvious enough for them to say that he would not be afraid to do everything possible to keep Momo safe. From that moment on, Momo had been teased by her mother when she talked to her about Izuku and what she had said, and even though she was embarrassed, she liked that her mother and father accepted Izuku as a possible partner for her. Since the attack, the UA had left several days without classes so that students could rest and stay with their families so that they would not be so afraid of possible harm to their children. This day, which was sunny, she had asked her mother for help since she wanted to go with Izuku to the mall, since she had asked Izuku on a date the day after the attack, and she needed help from her mother since she was nervous, since she didn't know how to behave and how to dress. At that moment she did not know what to do, and at that her mother had a smile, since that same feeling she had when she went out for the first time with Momo's father, and it gave her quite a lot of pride that her daughter had the same problems as her. After all, that made her understand that she was following the path that she chose, but she was not going to be bad with her daughter, and she thought to help her in everything that she could, to which she was helping Momo choose clothes which to wear for the date that she would have with Izuku, since she wanted to look good in front of Izuku. And although sometimes she made jokes to Momo with Izuku just to annoy her a bit, in the end she helped her daughter the best she could. And as for the question of how to behave, her mother only told her that she should be as always and not try to look like someone else. While that was happening with Momo, Izuku had a similar problem, but not so much from him but rather from his mother, who was very nervous about her son's date, who tried to calm her down since he had everything prepared. So after his mother continued with her nervousness, Izuku left his house and began to go to the meeting place, while calling the attention of several people, to whom while he was walking he went into a bookstore and bought a book to be able to hide his face somewhat, and rather not call too much attention. So when he arrived at the meeting place, I stayed waiting reading the book I bought. After a few minutes, Izuku looked up, looking ahead, where Momo was dressed in a white shirt and a fake rose while wearing pink heels and had a bag in her hand. And when she saw that Izuku was looking at her, she blushed because she didn't know what he would think, which made her very nervous. In addition, from her point of view, Izuku dressed in a way that made him look quite handsome. Izuku was dressed in a gray sweater while he had a black t-shirt attached to his body, and he had black pants along with a belt which was dark gray. Apart from that, he had black tennis shoes with touches of gray. Ignore the gloves, I may use this image again in another story. Izuku just stared at Momo for a few seconds and then approached her and took her hand and then knelt down and kissed the back of her hand, and that was the last straw, since just seeing that Momo fell unconscious, and at the same time seeing that, Izuku couldn't help but have a drop of sweat on his head, since he didn't think what he did was a big deal. But anyway, while Izuku had Momo carried in a bridal manner, he carried her to a nearby park bench where he sat with her lying on his lap. After several minutes passed, Momo woke up and the first thing she could see was Izuku's face above her, to which she was surprised, but after a moment she understood what was happening and stood up blushing. Izuku, don't worry, don't faint again. While Izuku said that, he said it with a mocking voice. Momo, and I damn stupid. After hearing that, the only response Momo received was Izuku's soft laugh, which was interrupted as Momo took Izuku's hand and began to look away, to which Izuku understood and stood up to walk next to Momo, to the shopping center where they would spend their date. Upon arriving at the shopping center, the first thing that happened was that Izuku found himself dragged by Momo, who began to see clothing stores in which she took out clothes, showed them to Izuku and asked him if he thought the garment was cute, and this continued until Momo he looked at one of underwear, but when he saw where Momo was going, Izuku used a little force and pulled her towards him, and after giving her a hug, he guided her to a movie theater in the shopping center while he escaped from the underwear store. At the time of arriving at the cinema, Momo showed Izuku a movie which was romantic, and the truth was that Izuku didn't care which one to watch as long as they didn't get to go to that clothing store, to which he asked for 2 tickets to see that movie. Which was about, well, what it's going to be about is romance, it's almost obvious. After Izuku and Momo left at the end, Izuku was surprised since he didn't think what happened was going to happen. After all, the protagonist of the movie died at the end after having saved his girlfriend, and it seemed that Momo had been quite affected by the movie since she had several tears in her eyes, and she held Izuku's hand very tightly, which made him smile, and he began to go to a food area that was in the shopping center to see if his companion wanted something to eat, which was a good thing since they both approached a stand where they sold ice cream. After they both bought their ice cream, Izuku walked away from Momo to go to the bathroom, but he actually wanted to buy something he had seen that Momo might like, and he wanted to buy it for him. At the moment Izuku was returning with a gift box in his hands, he saw how several guys were trying to make Momo go with them. Izuku, what a cliché. Izuku just approached Momo, took her by the hand, and then looked with his eyes at the guys, who left when they saw him, and upon seeing that, Izuku looked at Momo with a small smile. Izuku, I can't stop looking at you for a moment without you getting some guy's attention. Momo didn't say anything when she heard this, but she had a face that seemed to want to say something embarrassing, and seeing that, Izuku began to think of cheesy things that could be said in this situation until Momo spoke. Momo, why yes be but I'm only interested in why you. Izuku, gosh, said 11. Izuku heard her, just smiled while he saw that she was very red, and to make her redder he knelt on one leg and took out the little box which had his gift, which he opened and showed a ring which made it look like Izuku wanted to propose to Momo. Although she knew that he was doing that as a joke, she couldn't help but blush along with the image and the thought that it wasn't a joke, and then think about a wedding with Izuku and then go on to images of their honeymoon, which made her start to bleed from her nose. After thinking about that, Momo wiped her nose and Izuku took the ring in her hand, to which Momo put her left hand pointing at Izuku, to which Izuku put the ring on her ring finger, and after that got up, which just by doing so she received a hug from Momo and a kiss on her cheek. After that, they both blushed as people around them began to applaud, thinking that they had gotten engaged. After that Izuku took Momo from there, who gladly walked away from the crowd that was congratulating them. Chapter 7. After Izuku and Momo left the mall, Izuku laughed a little, and then, after letting go of Momo's hand, he grabbed it again. But this time, Momo intertwined her fingers with Izuku's, who looked at her and then tightened his grip a little more and began to walk outside the mall. After Izuku and Momo walked for a while, they arrived at the park where Momo had been lying on Izuku's legs, and remembering that she blushed a little, but Izuku didn't notice. But while they were walking, Momo couldn't help but look at Izuku. Momo, Izuku? Izuku, what's wrong? Hearing Momo Izuku, he just stopped to look at Momo, who was looking at him. Momo, I want to apologize again. Izuku, excuse me? Momo, yes, I left you that time. While Momo was saying that, she started to shed some tears, but Izuku dried those tears with his fingers and then looked at Momo in his eyes. Izuku, don't worry about it. Momo, but I abandoned you. Izuku, and now we are together again. Momo blushed upon hearing this as she felt Izuku grab her hand even tighter than before, which made her smile. Izuku, you look prettier when you smile, so please always keep smiling. Momo, yes. After Momo digested that, Izuku began to lead her in the direction of his house. After all, it was already getting dark, and he didn't want to make a bad impression on his parents on the first date he had with his daughter. It wouldn't be good at all for them to have a bad impression of him. After Momo and Izuku had been walking for a long time, they arrived at a mansion which was Momo's house. Izuku, well, that's all I've got. I hope you had fun. Momo hearing Izuku smile, but she didn't answer his question. She just came closer to hug Izuku by the neck while smiling at him innocently, which Izuku seeing her was strange, but then he felt how Momo was kissing him on the lips. After a few seconds, Izuku began to reciprocate the kiss while he hugged Momo by the waist to bring her closer to him, which made Momo lick Izuku's lower lip, which he understood, and opened his mouth, which made both of them start to have a more intense kiss, which had become a fight of tongues, which Izuku had won, which was exploring Momo's mouth while she released some small moans from the kiss she was having with the person she liked. After Izuku and Momo were in an intense kiss for several minutes, they separated and stared into each other's eyes, mesmerized, Izuku through Momo's jet black eyes and Momo through Izuku's emerald eyes. But your visible appreciation for each other was stopped by a cough which implied that they were not alone, to which the two looked to the side and looked at how the father and mother were looking at the young couple. Momo's mother was blushing while holding a hand on her mouth while you could hear her saying the word, "Era. Era." And while the mother was like that, the father had a frown towards Izuku, who looked at him with his typical tranquility. Izuku, hello? Hearing that, Momo's father only frowned deeper. Father, I hope you take responsibility. Hearing that, Izuku became serious as he kept his gaze on Momo's father. Izuku, of course. After Izuku said that, he received another kiss from Momo, which after she gave it to him, she ran to her parents' side, and at that Izuku just greeted them and then started to leave, but in the background he heard Momo's father. Father, I hope you keep your promise to protect my daughter. Izuku smiled at what Momo's father said. Seeing Izuku disappear into the darkness of the streets, Momo looked at her parents while keeping a pout. Momo, why did they interrupt? Hearing that, Momo's mother started laughing and the father just had a twitch of his eyebrow. Mother, well, your father didn't want to let it get to something more intense. While Momo's mother said those words, she had a mischievous tone, apart from laughing a little at her daughter's expression. Father, let's leave the conversation. And as Momo's father said, they stopped the conversation, and it was for the best, since Momo was so blushing that she left a certain Hyuga from another universe humiliated, which had nothing to do with hers. Mother, although I want you to tell me everything that happened. While that was happening with Momo, with Izuku he was walking home quite happy, although he still kept his calm face, which when he got home changed to one of some confusion, since his mother upon seeing him enter began to ask him questions about how his date was and all that, while he was more nervous than her, as if she had been the one who had the date. That seemed funny to Izuku, who began to tell his mother most of the things that happened, obviously leaving aside some things that he didn't want to tell her since he did not see it necessary. The next day a letter from the UA arrived to all the students informing them that dormitories had been set up for the students to keep them safer and more protected, which although Inko was somewhat sad because her son left, she accepted her son's decision to leave. They were also informed that classes would start 2 days later so that the moving trucks could reach all the students, which Izuku understood quite a bit. After all, there were quite a few students at the UA, plus it would give him more free days, better for him. 2 days after the letter arrived and 1 day after the moving truck arrived at Izuku's house, he was in front of the UA, where before he found himself he met Momo, who was embarrassed, and just seeing her he apologized, which made him strange. After they entered the UA and arrived at their classroom, Aizawa told them to follow him, since that day they would do nothing more than show them their dormitories, which had everyone quite excited. Aizawa, all the dormitories are separated. The boys' dormitories are on the right side and the girls' dormitories are on the left side, except for 2 of them. Tsuyu, what do you mean by 2? Aizawa, at the request of Miss Yayorozu, Izuku's parents, she and Izuku slept in a room which is more like an apartment for 2 people. Hearing that, everyone, including Izuku, looked at Momo, who hid behind Izuku while continuing to apologize to Izuku, who honestly didn't care, since if it was like an apartment for 2, it would have 2 rooms. Mineta, how unfair. As she said that, she launched herself at Izuku to try to pull his shirt, but was greeted with a kick to the face which sent him flying. While Izuku was doing that, Momo heard Uraraka look at her and say, "Cheater. Aizawa, stop making a fuss." After Aizawa showed each of them their room, Aizawa began to guide Izuku and Momo to their room, which was like 4 rooms of each of their classmates. Aizawa, here it is, well bye. After Aizawa said that, he left the place while Izuku and Momo entered and found that it was more of a house, but they both saw something, and it was a small sign which was on the kitchen table which said something about how he waited they would enjoy the place, and apart from that he told Izuku that although he was interested in having grandchildren, he didn't want to have them so soon, and so well he told them that it was Momo's mother who was to blame for all of that, and apart from that he told them that it was more so that they would get used to being together. They read everything together and both couldn't blush at the thing about grandchildren. After seeing that, they both went to see the place more, and they could see that there was only 1 room, and at that Izuku quickly said that he would sleep in the bed, but before he left the room Momo took him by the sleeve of his shirt, and while her eyes were spirals and blood was coming out of her nose while she kept a blush on her face, she told him that they would sleep together, and there was no discussion, and at that Izuku didn't say anything. While they investigated more, they both separated, and the one who found something very embarrassing was Momo, which she found in one of the cabinets of the nightstand was a box full of condoms, and that made her nervous, which made her close the drawer violently, which made Izuku look at her. Izuku, what's wrong? Momo, nothing. Izuku just looked at Momo strangely, but after they saw everything they both left the room and went to the room below where their classmates were, who looked at them with some interest. Mineta, how many beds do you have? Listening to Mineta, you could see a great seriousness in her voice, but when she heard the question Momo blushed, so Izuku had to answer. Izuku, 1. Mineta, hearing this, jumped at him while saying, "Lucky!" But once again he was greeted with a kick. Mina, what do you think if we do a room answer? Momo/Izuku, we refuse. Mina, why? Momo/Izuku, staff. Mina, let's go. Momo/Izuku, no. Mina, I can't convince them. Momo/Izuku, no. Mineta, now they talk at the same time. Damn lucky, why are you so lucky? Izuku became serious upon hearing this, which made everyone nervous except for Momo, who looked at Izuku with hearts in her eyes at his expression, which according to her was somewhat hexy because of how rude he looked. Izuku, if you don't leave your perversion behind, I'll get it out of you, and I assure you it won't be pretty. And one more thing, you try something with Momo and you'll stop having what makes you a man. After Izuku said that, he left the room and started walking towards his shared room, while the others were left with their mouths opened by Izuku's threat. But that stopped being something important when they saw Momo's face. Mina, it seems that you like it when it's serious and when it's scary. Momo, ahumi. Mina, yes, well, although there is another one just like you. While saying that, he was looking at Uraraka, who was blushing as she looked at the place where Izuku left. Momo, well, unlike him, he's mine. Uraraka, what did you say? Momo, that he is mine. Uraraka, he's only with you because we don't know each other well, and you're just lucky because your parents managed to get you both to sleep in the same room. Momo, even if my family wouldn't have done that, my Aizawa would have been mine alone. Uraraka, damn cow. Momo, round face. Uraraka, succubus. Momo, you call me a succubus. I didn't try to seduce Izuku to go out with me. Uraraka, how do you know that? Momo, you think I didn't have you under surveillance? Uraraka, you. Momo, Jujuju, I hope you stay away from me. Izuku, after all, no matter what you do, he is only mine. After Momo said that, she went the same way Izuku went to see what he was doing. Chapter 8. The moment Momo arrived in her shared room with Izuku, she found Izuku sitting at the kitchen table reading a book, to which she approached from behind him to hug him. Then give him a kiss on the cheek. Momo, Aizawa, what do you think about going together? Izuku, well, it will be difficult to get used to it, but I don't really dislike it. Hearing that, Momo laughed and started to move in the direction of the room she entered, but not before telling Izuku to wait for her, to which he obeyed. After several minutes, Momo came out dressed differently, more casually for being in a room. Momo had dressed in a sweater with black shorts which were not very tight, and she kept her hair loose. Momo, what do you think? Izuku, you look beautiful. Having your hair down gives you a very cute touch, Momo. Hearing that, Momo smiled at Izuku and approached his ear to whisper. Momo, you know Izuku-kun, I don't have underwear. Hearing this, Izuku turned red, which made Momo giggle and then bite his ear. Momo, what if? Before Momo finished, a knock sounded at the door, and upon hearing that, Momo made an annoyed face, but Izuku separated from her and went to open it with his book in hand. When Izuku opened the door, he found his classmates. Izuku, what's wrong? Mina, we want to see your room. Izuku just sighed when he heard her. Izuku, Momo, what do you think? Momo, leave them. Izuku, okay. After Izuku said that, he moved out of the way of the door while continuing with his book, but now he was only holding it with one hand since the other had been held by Momo's hands, which grabbed it possessively while looking at Uraraka. Mina, this is pretty normal, apart from the big one. Mineta, it can't be true, they only have one bed, they slept together. Izuku, me and Ita remember what I told you. Saying that, the minor became very tense and stopped talking, but he continued to cry mentally for the fate of his classmate. Mina, her room is pretty normal, apart from the double bed and the shape of the room. Tsuyu, you're right, we expected more. Note, while I was writing this good chapter after writing the previous 3, I thought of putting lemon on this story, but I'd better not to. After some time passed in which Momo and Momo's classmates were looking at their shared room, they left since according to them they had to continue with their investigation. Which seemed strange to Izuku since he really did not understand the need to see the others' rooms, but he no longer gave importance to that and simply stopped thinking about them, and just closed his door and went to the table where he grabbed an apple that was there and began to eat it. Izuku, Momo. Momo, what's up, Izuku-kun? Izuku, how about going on a picnic tomorrow? Hearing that, Momo left the room very quickly while still having her hair somewhat wet. Momo, seriously. Izuku, you should put some clothes on. Momo, don't change the subject. Izuku, well, if he was serious, do you want to go on a picnic tomorrow? Momo, sure, what time? Izuku, after school you should put on some clothes. Momo, it's okay. After Momo said that, she went back into the room where she started to change into some clothes that weren't just plain. While Lolo went in to change, Izuku just started to think, but after that he just went into the room and looked at Momo for a moment. After all, she was already changed into some clothes that were more normal. Izuku, you know, I think it wouldn't be such a bad idea for him to sleep on the couch. Momo, what? Izuku, I don't think so. Momo, yes, I heard you, but I want to know why you don't want to sleep with me. Momo, you see, you have no arguments, so you're going to sleep with me. Izuku, okay. After Izuku took off his UA clothes and put on clothes similar to Momo's to sleep, Momo pushed him onto the bed and turned off the light and then hugged Izuku from behind. Momo, good night, Izuku-kun. Izuku, good night. The next day Aizawa was explaining to all the students about the sports festival, to which he received questions about whether it was for the best. After all, the villains had attacked them while ago, but Aizawa answered yes since there would be many heroes at the place. At the end of classes, Izuku and Momo left the UA after having taken a basket where there was food to have their picnic, and although none of them noticed it, they were being followed by their classmates who were curious about what would happen. After Izuku and Momo arrived at their destination, Izuku began to put everything away, and Momo, well, she was spinning around the field since there were purple butterflies which made them start to surround her. But after a few seconds only a click was heard, and when Momo looked at Izuku she noticed that she had her cell phone camera on, and when she saw that she put a pout on her face. Izuku, no need to make that face, you didn't come out bad. After Izuku said that, he showed Momo the photo where she appeared while being surrounded by butterflies. Izuku, also in the photo you can see that you were looking at me, so I don't know why you were surprised by the photo. Momo blushed when she saw that. Izuku, haha, well, how about we eat, Momo? Momo, of course, Izuku-kun. After Momo said that, she sat next to Izuku, who served her some tea that they had in a thermos. While they did that with their UA classmates, they were discussing. Jairu, we should go. Mina, why? Jairu, because this is time just for them. Tsuyu, I agree with Joru. Mineta, I don't want to stay. Kirishima, you know what Izuku will do to you if he finds out, and it's not easy to spy on his classmates. Mina, wait, Momo is going to say something. Momo, Izuku-en, what do you think about the sports festival? Izuku, what do I think? Momo, yes, I want to know what you think of him. Izuku, well, I don't think much about that, it's just something that is used to show some of our abilities. After all, we are future heroes. Momo, you think there will be no problems? Izuku, upon hearing this, took Momo's hands. Izuku, calm down, no matter what happens, I will help you, and you should also trust yourself more, you are strong. Momo just gave Izuku a smile for that and gave him a quick kiss. Momo, we should eat Izuku-en. Izuku, yes. After Momo and Izuku were there for several hours, they returned to Yue along with their classmates, who were still following them. Momo, Izuku-en. Izuku, what's wrong? Momo, you can wait about 5 minutes without entering our room. Izuku, sure, but why? Momo, it's a surprise. When Momo said that, Izuku understood, and he just stayed outside his room waiting for Momo to open the door so that he had already prepared the surprise. Minutes later, as Momo said, it was a surprise because when Momo opened the door, Izuku he could see Momo dressed as a maid. Momo, welcome home, master, would you like to eat something? Would you like a bath? Or maybe I would like. Izuku, upon seeing her and hearing her, just closed the door. Izuku, well, I already ate. While he started talking, he started getting closer to Momo. Izuku, I'm not interested in a bath then. When he left those words in the air, he was already next to Momo, whom he had hugged from the waist. Momo, I'm what you'd want. Izuku, of course. Momo turned very red upon hearing this, but she closed her eyes and brought her lips closer to Izuku's, who was the one who approached her to join their lips, and that made Momo stop being so tense, but after a few seconds of being kissing, Momo broke up. Momo, Izuku-en. Izuku, what's wrong? Momo, I love you. Izuku, I know. After he said that, Izuku took Momo's chin with his other hand to lift it, and gave her another kiss, only this one was deeper. After a few minutes continuing with the kiss, they both separated, but before Izuku digested anything, Momo he took him to the room and sat him on the bed. Izuku, what are you doing? When Momo heard him, she didn't answer and just sat on his legs and continued with the kiss. Only now she was the one who was taking more control until Izuku fell back on the bed and turned around to leave Momo down, whom he continued kissing, but after several minutes Izuku broke away from the kiss and approached Momo's ear. Izuku, we can't get past here. After he digested that, he blew in her ear and got up to leave the room, leaving a Momo who was somewhat blushing and angry, and this was evident when she saw her cheeks, which were inflated. Momo, Izuku, you are an idiot. Note, or who knows, maybe if I put lemon into the story. After Momo changed again, she left the room and found Izuku, who was sitting on the couch, to which she approached him. Momo, you know Izuku, you're very bad. Izuki, like this, and why? Momo, my suit is very wrinkled now. Izuku, I wasn't the one who was moving anxiously while we were kissing. Saying that, Momo blushed and sat next to Izuku and then lay down and hugged Izuku, only this time she was on top of Izuku, who could only see how Momo was burying her face in his chest out of embarrassment, and that made him laugh, but Izuku returned the hug. Izuku, Momo, what do you think if we trained together for the festival? After all, there are still 2 weeks left until the start of this festival. Momo, I would love to be able to train with you. Izuku, well, tomorrow we will start. Momo, yes, I will do my best. Izuku just started laughing after Momo said that, which made Momo start giving them several light blows on his chest. Izuku, yeah, sorry, it's just that you're too cute and not bothering you is impossible. Momo, Izuku, you are bad. After she said that, she just stared at the television in the room, and when she saw that Izuku just hugged her and started watching television with her while they were hugging each other. Chapter 9 Sports Festival. 2 weeks had passed since Momo and Izuku had been training, and they felt completely ready for whatever would happen at the sports festival. This day all the other students were anxious since it was the day the sports festival began, and although several felt they did not let that stop their nervous enthusiasm to participate in the festival. At this moment all the students of Class 1A were in a rest area since in a few minutes they would leave when they were called. After a few minutes a fairly familiar voice, as it was the present Mike, spoke. Present Mike, and the stars who survived fighting off a villain attack in Class 1A. After he said that the whole class left with Izuku in front. After they went out and stood in front of a fairly large area where the heroine Midnight was waiting for all the other classes to arrive. When they did she said several things until she asked for the first-year student representative to come by to give a few words of encouragement, to which he said it was Izuku who went up without any problem. After Izuku went up and stood next to Midnight, he took the microphone. Izuku, maybe all of us here once asked ourselves why? Why do I want to be a hero? Several of you may say something like I want to save people, but being a hero doesn't only imply that. Being a hero implies not only being someone saving people but also implies being a symbol of justice, being a symbol that shows that people can trust us. A symbol which is for the protection of people. Being afraid is something normal, and I can notice that many people are afraid and are nervous about this sports festival, but as heroes we always have to be willing to sacrifice everything to save people, to save friends, companions, family. Being a hero isn't just about saving people, is giving everything for them, so I hope that all of you put in a lot of effort in this sports festival, since that is how you will show that you are capable of becoming true heroes. So I would like to know, do you want to be heroes? Students, yeses. After that last scream, Izuku came down and stood next to Momo, taking him by the hand while smiling at Izuku, who smiled back. Midnight, well, now we will spin a roulette wheel. Whatever comes out on the roulette wheel will be the activity we will do. After Midnight spun a roulette wheel, it was time for the obstacle course, and at that Midnight just gave the rules of this test, and everyone went to wait for everything to be arranged for the obstacle course. By the time everything was settled, everyone was behind a starting line which was full of UA students from the hero classes to the support and general classes, which almost all kept a very tense look except for a pink-haired girl who was so excited while saying things like showing her babies. Seeing that, Izuku just stopped looking and began to see the possible futures that would happen, and they all came to one. Only Todoroki would do something, and he knew that since he could see how Todoroki's muscles tensed, and although that was something normal in everyone since they were preparing to run. Not only those of his legs were tensing but also those of his hand, that meant that he would use his power. And seeing that, Izuku began to see possible ways out of this. What he could do was wait so that the ice would not affect him, and then leave or try to leave before Todoroki so that the ice would not affect him. Izuku, although I can too. As he said that, a soft smile appeared on Izuku's face which activated his eyes. When the signal for the start of the obstacle course began, Izuku watched in slow motion as Todoroki's ice formed, and at that, Izuku made a small entrance through which he could pass without having to make much effort, which was not affected by Todoroki's ice, so he ran out while closing the door he had made and then deactivating his eyes. Present Mike, student Todoroki Shoto from Class 1A comes in first place. After Izuku started running and positioned himself quite close to Todoroki, Izuku gave him small touches on his shoulder which made Todoroki turn around, and he would find an Izuku who was smiling, which bothered him, but he could only watch as Izuku then jumped to the right, which surprised him, but that feeling went away when he felt the pain after having received the hit of a giant robot and miners that sent him flying. Izuku kept running, but at some point he stood still, letting some students pass in front of him, and waited until he saw how Momo passed in front of him, to which he approached her and grabbed Mineta, who was on her back, which he threw to a robot which hit him, and seeing that, Izuku carried Momo in a bridal form and started running as fast as possible. Momo, what's up, Izuku? Izuku, upon hearing Momo, just gave her a slight smile but did not answer as he continued running while dodging some robots. After Izuku was carrying Momo for a long time, he reached the area where there were platforms while below them there was a large fall. Seeing that, Izuku did not know what to do to be able to pass that. Izuku, you know how to get through this, Momo. Momo, hey? I'm not sorry, Aizawa-kun. Izuku, it doesn't matter, I already found our way out. Momo, huh? While Izuku was saying that, he activated his quirk and began to jump very high since he had stolen the quirk from an elf who had a physical enhancement. Or at least that was what he thought it was. At the end, when he reached the other side, he deactivated his quirk and noticed how further ahead there were many places with moved earth, as if there was something buried, and upon seeing that, Izuku just began to run along their sides without touching them. While Izuku was focused on running, he heard a slight moan from Momo, to which he looked at her. "Momo, Aizawa-kun, can you lower your hand a little?" Hearing that, Izuku looked at his hand, which was touching Momo's chest, to which he lowered it, which earned another moan from Momo, since he hadn't raised his hand and had only dragged it. "Momo, Aizawa-kun." "Izuku, what's wrong?" Momo, and no, nothing. While Izuku was lost in his thoughts as he continued running, he heard some explosions and screams, to which he looked back, where he found a beaten and angry Todoroki next to a Bakugo who was angry but not beaten. The moment they both arrived at Izuku's side, he just looked at them both and activated his eyes, and after doing that he watched as they both pointed their hands towards him, to which Izuku threw Momo into the air and watched as the ice began to come out of Todoroki's hand at a very slow speed, and at that he looked in the other direction where he saw how Bakugo was making an explosion. After that he looked at Momo, who was in the air. Izuku jumped to the left where Todoroki was and turned around using his back as support, which made Todoroki hit Bakugo with his ice, who was surprised and looked at where Izuku fell, which was to his left, and saw how Izuku had his right hand behind his head. "Izuku, didn't you see it coming?" After Izuku said that, Todoroki's head was against the ground while bleeding from his nose. And after doing that Izuku extended his hands where Momo fell, who hugged Izuku because she was scared. "Present Mike. But what have you taught your students, Aizawa? That was incredible." "Aizawa, I haven't taught them anything." After he said that, he watched as the first ones to enter were Izuku and Momo, who came in first just for being ahead of Izuku when she was being carried. When some confetti explosions fell, Izuku released Momo, who hugged him by the neck and gave him a kiss on the mouth, which was seen by everyone since they were being recorded by the camera. After a few seconds, when they separated, Momo was only looking at Izuku, so he hadn't noticed. "Izuku, you know that the kiss was seen by everyone, right?" Saying that, Momo looked around and noticed how the giant Spanatalis had her image, and seeing that, Momo turned red and just hugged Izuku while hiding in his chest, to which Izuku let out a light laugh. After a few minutes Todoroki arrived second, still bleeding from his nose, and stared daggers at Izuku, who just ignored him. After Todoroki, Bakugo arrived, literally smoking, and after him, several students began to arrive, who are not important, along with some from Class 1A. After a while Midnight he spoke again and warned about spinning the wheel again, to which when he did he touched on cavalry fights. And at that Momo looked into Izuku's eyes, to which he just nodded, and at that Momo smiled. After that Izuku separated from Momo and approached a certain pink-haired girl, to whom he asked if she wanted to be on his team, to which she responded with a yes. When Hatsune answered yes to Izuku, he began to look around for someone, but his search was stopped by a touch on his shoulder, causing him to turn around and find Uraraka. "Uraraka, can I join you, Izuku?" Izuku, sure. After Izuku said that, he took Uraraka and Hatsune to Momo's side. "Momo, I think it would be better if Uraraka is up there." "Izuku, I agree, but we still have to formulate a plan. After all, we will be the ones attacked." After several minutes passed, Midnight gave way to the cavalry battles, where just starting all the teams launched an attack against Izuku's team, which upon seeing them, Izuku activated his quirk and created a wall of ice between his team and all the others except Todoroki's, since he couldn't reveal his quirk yet, which was surprised to see ice around him without him having done it, but his disbelief was stopped by the scream of one of his teammates, and when he looked he noticed how Izuku's team was by his side, but what bothered him to see was that Izuku swept the leg of one of his teammates, which made him start to fall, which made everything go off balance, and he was falling, but that didn't stop him, and he tried to remove Momo's headband, but his hand was taken by Izuku, and he was pulled to Izuku, who just smiled at him, which made him more upset, but he had to do something because if not he would fall to the ground, and that he couldn't allow it, so he created ice, which I used to read on Izuku now. After Izuku said that, his team flew away thanks to Mei's invention, and he and his entire team fell on top of the ice wall he had made, and they started running. Izuku, Uraraka, get ready. Uraraka, yes. While saying that, Izuku was watching as an angry Bakugo approached, and at that he lightly touched Uraraka with his foot, to which she activated her quirk, and the three of them launched Momo into the air while Izuku stood in front of Bakugo, whom he took by the arm and directed his explosions elsewhere, and after doing that he jumped, and in the air put his feet next to his head and on top of his shoulders, and then he began to put a key on Bakugo's arm, which fell to the ground face down due to the extra weight, not before Izuku removed the headband that he had, which was from position number 4. Before Bakugo tried to get up or do anything, Midnight ended the test, which disqualified Bakugo for the next one since he no longer had his headband. Bakugo, damn Quirkless. Izuku, any, Bakugo-chan, I'm not Quirkless. After saying that, Izuku left the place, walking calmly after everything. Momo was already on the ground. Chapter 10. After a few minutes, Midnight announced that the next test would be one-on-one fights, for which everyone prepared until they announced how the fights would be, and the first fight would be between Momo and Shinso, who was smiling. When they both entered the combat zone and the start of the fight was given, Momo took out a metal staff, but Shinso did nothing. Shinso, after I beat you, I'll do the same with your boyfriend, haha. Momo, you won't be able to beat Izuku. Before he could say anything else, his eyes rolled back in his head and he stopped moving. Shinso, ha, now get out of here. After Shinso said that, Momo began to walk towards the exit of the place without resisting, which surprised many, but those who knew Shinso's quirk were not surprised at all. After Momo left the combat zone and Shinso was declared the winner, she stood still, not knowing what happened, but she still returned to Izuku's side, who was sitting on the benches watching the fight. Momo, I'm sorry, Izuku. Izuku, don't worry. Momo, upon hearing this, just sat down next to him and rested her head on his shoulder. After several fights, Izuku was going to fight against a girl who had green hair and was called Ibara Shiozaki. When they were both in the fight zone, Izuku was just looking at each other with his calm expression, while Ibara was watching him attentively for what would happen. Present Mike, hey Aizawa, that's your student. What is his quirk? He hasn't shown it. Aizawa, nobody knows what his quirk is. Present Mike, nobody knows what your student's quirk is. Aizawa, I'm not sure if anyone, but I don't know who it is. Midnight, begin. After saying that, Izuku ran towards Ibara, who began to throw vines at him to catch him or harm him, but these were dodged by Izuku, who since he arrived next to Ibara showed his arm as if he was going to attack with it, to which Ibara covered herself with her arms, which she put them in little. Izuku, please surrender. Ibara, why yes. Midnight, the winner is Izuku Midoriya. Saying that, Izuku stood up and touched Ibara's shoulder, who was still blushing a little. Izuku, you have a good quirk. Ibara, you didn't use your quirk. Izuku, having my quirk has given me very high reflexes without the need to use it. Yes, I have used it, well, in some way. After Izuku said that, he began to go to the stands where his teammates were, who just stared at him. After more fights passed which were completely boring or unnecessary, Izuku was called again since he would fight against Todoroki, who was obviously angry. While Izuku was walking to the entrance to go fight against Todoroki, he met the number 2 hero, who told him something about Todoroki which he honestly didn't hear and didn't give it any importance. When Izuku arrived in front of Todoroki, he only had an angry expression. Izuku, what's wrong? Todoroki, I will defeat you. Izuku, good for you. Saying that, Todoroki frowned even more than he had before. Izuku, oh, how delicate. Note reference. Midnight, begin. Just a second after Midnight said those words, ice appeared and attacked Izuku, who was covered by smoke, making it impossible for anyone to see him. When the smoke cleared, you could see how Izuku was leaning his back against the ice that Todoroki made. Todoroki, why don't you attack? Izuku, let me think. I already know my eyes will be affected, so no thanks. Todoroki, will you let me win? Izuku, haha, little thing. After Izuku said that he started walking slowly but steadily. After a few steps he started to pick up speed until he started running towards Todoroki, who seeing him run threw ice at him, which Izuku dodged and continued dodging until almost reaching in front of Todoroki, but before reaching Izuku activated his eyes and jumped back as Todoroki made several ice spikes appear in front of him. After Izuku jumped back he jumped to the right and then to the left where the ice spike that Todoroki had formed was, in which he grabbed onto and pushed himself to jump over the spikes that Todoroki created in front of him. Who could not predict that Izuku would jump over them, so he received a kick in the face for it. But the kick did not stop Todoroki, who created an ice wall behind him so he would not fall, and tried to freeze Izuku's leg, but Izuku, seeing what he wanted to do, jumped dodging Todoroki's hand, while he fell in front of him, where he crouched down and put his hands on the ground and then gave a spinning kick in Todoroki's face which touched his leg, which froze it, causing now Izuku's leg to be a block of ice. And seeing that, Izuku smiled, and while he continued to turn around from the kick he had done, he continued with the force of inertia and used his leg that had turned to ice to hit Todoroki in the face, which was strong enough to break some of the ice in the part that hit Todoroki, who began to bleed from his head from the blow. After Izuku gave the blow, he dropped his ice-covered leg to the ground and the ice was destroyed, leaving a little on his leg but not enough to make it unmanageable, although Izuku did not feel his leg very well, to which he raised it until his knee was at the level of his waist and put one of his hands behind him while the other was pointing at Todoroki, who threw a kick at Izuku to the body, which he dodged by jumping back and then turning jump with his leg, and then while he was in the air he kicked Todoroki in the back of the neck, who was about to fall to the ground, but before he hit the ground Izuku grabbed him by the head and lifted him up while he was still in the air, where with his knee, which was still on his waist, he kneed him, which made a cracking sound could be heard. When he received that knee blow, Izuku released Todoroki, who fell to the ground just like the worst one. Unlike Izuku, Todoroki was unconscious. Midnight, the winner is Izuku Midoriya. At what midnight Izuku said, who was sitting on the floor, he raised his fist in the air and then stood up and started walking while cleaning the infirmary. After all, his leg didn't feel very well. When Izuku arrived at the infirmary he met Recovery Girl, who, upon seeing him, cured him, or at least did her best, although she told him to rest a bit so that his leg would be as good as possible and, apart from that, to move it so that it would warm up, since, having frozen, its movement would be painful and difficult. After another match passed, Izuku was called again since it would be the final. Izuku, do you think I can fight? Recovery, your leg is fine now, the only thing is what I told you about the ice. Izuku, okay. After Izuku said that, he got up from the bed where he was and went to the combat zone, where above him was Shinsho. Izuku, he has no combat skills, I won't forgive you for what happened with Momo. When Izuku arrived at the combat zone he waited for midnight to give the starting signal, to which he closed his eyes. Midnight, begin. After he said that, Izuku opened his eyes with his quirk already activated and launched himself against Shisho, who tried to do the same as with Momo, which was to talk, but Izuku ignored him, to which Shisho in desperation raised his right arm to deliver a punch which, when thrown, passed next to Izuku's face on the left kind after the left fist crashed into Shinsho's face, which was going to fall to the ground by the force of the blow, but Izuku took the arm that Shinsho had thrown to hit him and pulled him towards him to give him another blow to the face, to after doing that attract him again and put Shinsho's arm on his shoulder and lift him up to then throw him against the ground, where when they collided by force Shinsho got up from this, to which Izuku grabbed Shinsho's shirt, which he attracted him and left him for a moment in the air, when he released him and grabbed him by the waist to then do a German suplex and thus end the battle by leaving a beaten and injured Shinsho and knocked out on the ground after having let him fall after the suplex. Midnight, the winner is Izuku Midoriya. Surprise invaded the entire stadium. After all, it was a brutal defeat on Izuku's part. After all, Shinsho had not been able to do anything and received a beating that he would never forget. After they took Shinsho to the infirmary and some things were prepared, Izuku was on a podium in which he was in first place, while there was a Shinsho already awake and injured in second place, and Todoroki in third place. They all greeted them and were awarded a medal by All Might, which after that said something about plus ultra and left. While Izuku was on the podium he approached him and introduced Mike by placing his microphone in front of him. Present Mike, young Izuku, what is your quirk? Hearing that, Izuku gave a slight smile and put one of his fingers on his lips while guiding his eye. Izuku, it's a secret. After he said that, he got off the podium and left the place, which left many people confused since they did not know what Izuku's quirk was. After Izuku left the podium, he met the number 2 hero again, to which Izuku, for the first time in a long time, no more rather for the first time in his entire life, put on a serious face. Izuku, what do you need? Endeavor, I would like to know why you didn't use your quirk. Izuku, who says not to use it? As he said that, he started walking next to Endeavor. Endeavor, I saw you in the obstacle course, your physical enhancement quirk, or something similar, because you didn't use it. Izuku. Looking back at him, Izuku was no longer there, so he also left the place. And after Endeavor was leaving the place, Izuku was looking for Momo with his eyes on the stands since he couldn't find her. Momo, were you looking for me? Izuku, yes. Momo, what do you need? Izuku, are we going home? Momo, yes, of course, let's go, Aizawa. After Momo said that, she grabbed Dr. Izuku's hand and they both left the place. Chapter 11 Original Sin. After a few days had passed after the sports festival, Izuku and Momo were resting mostly in their room. After all, studying was unnecessary. After all, they were both very intelligent, and this, like studying, affected classes and homework, which meant that they didn't have many problems with it. After a few days had passed, Momo and Izuku were looking at a board that Aizawa let them see, which showed them the heroes and companies that were interested in having them train with them, and although Izuku wanted to go to one, he didn't. You don't know which one. After all, what did he need? His eyes gave him so much. They gave him fighting ability and a powerful quirk. There were few things that could stand up to him. If he fought at his full level, after all, his power could be said to be broken. After all, the power to copy everything. Momo, Izuku and you already know which one you're going to go to. Izuku, no. Momo, because there are many interesting ones. Izuku, I don't know. Momo, what do you think if you go with? How about this? Endeavor is the number 2 hero. Izuku, no thanks, I have problems with the guy. Momo, what do you think of her Mirko? Izuku, it would be fitness and fighting that would teach me, I don't need it. Momo, and how about HAA Night Eye? Izuku, a possible option, but I'm not sure. While Izuku and Momo were each thinking about a different thing, Izuku with his life and Momo with her choosing, the UA teachers along with the director were seeing what could be some things that were given to them anonymously about the UA trader, where it showed how Momo Yaoyorozu was the one who showed them and gave information to the villains who attacked the UA along with other villains which they did not know. Aizawa, what are we going to do, director? Nizu, well, first of all, knowing who our traitor is, we have to think about something, and that is in the future if she finds out that we know about her betrayal. All Might, he's saying that we should let her stay at the UA for longer. Nizu, exactly, not showing any hint of our knowledge of his betrayal. Midnight, I understand if she knows she will report it, and she will do everything possible to escape or fulfill her objectives. Nizu, exactly. Aizawa, then we'll act like nothing will happen. Nizu, yes. Alright, but what will we do with it when we have to reveal it? Nizu, we will keep it only within the UA. If the knowledge is given to the public, people will begin to doubt the UA. It will not be good. All Might, is that what will happen? Nizu, Miss Yaoyorozu will also be removed from the academy for her betrayal. While those words began to sink into the thoughts of the teachers present in that place, Izuku had already made his decision, which he informed Momo, who remained completely silent upon hearing that Izuku was not going to take anything and would only stay to rest, and if necessary train his quirk by himself. Molo tried to make Izuku reconsider what he was saying, but he didn't succeed, to which she just sighed and let Izuku do whatever he wanted. After a few days we can find Izuku in the room he shares with Momo alone. After all, Momo had gone to the internships, to which he was left alone, but his loneliness at this moment was completely hidden by the anger that could be seen in his eyes for what he had received. In his hands Izuku had a letter in which it was explained to him how the villains had framed Momo as a traitor to the UA. which would lead to his possible expulsion or his possible imprisonment. Seeing that, Izuku had an angry face but also a face of helplessness because no matter what he did, his actions could not make Momo be forgiven or rather change the opinion that the UA heroes had at this moment about Momo, and although he would show them everything he had at this moment, it would be useless. He was clear that at some point Momo would be attacked either by the UA or by the villains, and the only thing he could do against the villains would be to defeat them, but against the heroes it would be difficult to do anything, so he was thinking as quickly as he could all the possibilities he could about the possible actions of the heroes and the possible ways to save Momo and at least protect her, and with that Izuku knew that what he had to do had to be thought about quickly before it happened, or at least while it was happening, since if he did it later it would be too late, so his attempts to help would be useless. After hours passed, Izuku left his room and went in an unknown direction as he disappeared into the darkness of the night that rose across Japan. Time skip 1 month. After a month passed where Izuku was doing things that were not known since he worked in the dark, leaving aside the light that illuminated him and his entire life to make plans while he was in the dark. And while Izuku was doing that, Momo was in her internship where she did what she was asked, unaware of what was happening around her, allowing the shadows to move without her knowledge, which were all around her but with different objectives. While some sought her elimination, others sought her arrest, and others sought her protection. But still without the knowledge of what would happen the moment she arrived at UA, since the wait for the UA teachers became annoying enough that more hasty measures had to be taken than Nizu would have liked, who at this moment was making plans for her chance. On this day, October 12th, a day in which all those who were within the UA and those who were around them in the form of those who had a closeness too strong as the villains who threateningly stalked the UA would enter into what would be their worst decision in all the years in which they worked. Not only because of the loss of 2 of their possible future heroes, but also because of the loss of the student with the most potential to be the one who would bring the world closer to an era full of peace, an era full of light which could stop the darkness in its attempts to attack in order to reign over the light. After all, today was the day when the UA students returned from their internships, which is when Momo arrived. What happened was that she was called by Nizu, who, upon seeing her enter his office, which was full of heroes, put on a serious face, which was reflected in all the faces of the other heroes. When Momo saw that, she knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what was happening, so she was somewhat confused, but like the other heroes she became serious, but you could notice some nervousness in her when you noticed how all the heroes looked at her with those serious eyes. Nizu, Miss Yaoyorozu, do you know why you are here? Momo, no. Nizu, well, Miss Yaoyorozu, we have received some evidence that you are a traitor who is in contact with the villains who attacked the UA a month ago. Before you speak, I have to tell you that we showed you the evidence. After everything was shown to Momo, and she denied what was happening, and in the end everything was left that she would be expelled from the UA, and that she would begin to shed tears, the office door opened in a way which was so strong that the door opened in a quite aggressive way which made the doors fall to the ground, causing the entire room to be filled with the sound of a loud bang, while the room before with a dim light was illuminated by the great light that came from outside the office, while in the door the figure of a man was shown in all his height, which the only thing that was visible of him was his silhouette, and his eyes, which were green, which showed the infinite power of his eyes and power. After the light entered and all the heroes saw that silhouette along with those eyes, the man entered the office and began to walk in the direction of Momo. As Izuku walked, he let the people inside the room look at who was there, and when he was seen by Momo, she began to shed more tears, which he looked at, which only made his eyes furrow for a moment in a grimace of anger, but just as quickly as he arrived he left, showing his tranquility again. The moment Izuku arrived in front of Momo, he crouched down to be at Momo's height, who had collapsed on the ground after what they told her. It was also shown how Izuku had an apple in his left hand which he was already biting, while with his right hand he was showing it, giving it to Momo, who was still on the ground, who understood that Izuku was showing her his hand so she would get up. Izuku, if you leave here, I will leave too. For me it is paradise wherever you are. Wherever you are I will always find Eden. There is nothing more beautiful than the contact with your skin. Hearing that, Momo jumped towards Izuku, who was buried in Momo's chest while she was crying, causing several tears to fall on Izuku's head. Izuku, please don't cry. I'm with you, so if we're united we'll withstand any punishment. Alright, what are you doing, boy? Izuku, a little bird told me what they would do. All power. If you know what is happening, why do you protect her? Izuku, it's none of your business. Nizu, you know what that means, right, young Midoriya? Izuku, I accept my sin. After Izuku said that, he dropped his apple, and while holding Momo's hand in his hand, he started walking towards the exit. Hero, who do you think you are to do that? Hearing that, Izuku looked at him, while he just turned his gaze slightly. Izuku, I am the original without. After he said that, he watched as the hero launched himself at him, to which he dodged and grabbed the arm with which he attacked him. Then he broke it, and continued walking as if nothing had happened, and left the director's office, and then went to his room and began to take everything that was his. Momo, Izuku, what happened? Izuku, you were framed. Momo, how did you know that? How would this happen? Izuku, probabilities, and the villains told me what they did so I could foresee several situations. Momo, because if you make this decision you won't be able to be a hero. Izuku, upon hearing her, stopped and stood in front of her, where he knelt on one leg and took one of her hands. Izuku, I was never interested in being a hero. The only thing that interested me was finding Eden, which I know I can only find and I can only have while I'm with you. After Izuku said that, he stood up and continued taking Momo to her room. After they got to their room and took all their things and left the place, the UA teachers were discussing whether it had been the best option to let them go, which they discussed for a long time, but in the end nothing was done and each one went their own way. Chapter 12. After Izuku and Momo left, and several weeks had passed since what happened, everything was revealed to all the students and teachers and everyone who was at the UA, which was received with quite a bit of strangeness by those who knew Izuku and Momo. After all, they would never have thought that Momo would do that, much less Izuku, since he was the most trustworthy person of all. After that was revealed to the students a few days later, the villains gave another attack when the students went to a UA camp, which made the teachers know that there was another traitor or they were wrong, which was revealed when the villains told them about this, but they couldn't do much since they were also given the knowledge that they had kidnapped the girl they had framed, which put them in a point full of despair. After all, it was the hero's fault for not having confirmed the evidence they were given. It was their fault for believing something they shouldn't have, and it was their fault for having taken Momo and Izuku out of the UA, causing Momo to be kidnapped, and in the face of that they began to do everything possible after everything was revealed to the public, causing the UA to fall into a state full of evil looks and distrust about their decisions and everything they did, since it was their fault that so many things went wrong. In these last few weeks, however, Izuku and Momo had gotten even closer than they already were, and Izuku got permission from Momo's parents to be her boyfriend, just as Momo got permission from Izuku's mother, who was completely happy for her son. Aside from that, Izuku and Momo spent all their time together until that terrible day happened, where when Izuku went to Momo's house he was greeted by the faces of Momo's parents, quite worried, which told him about Momo's kidnapping, which made Izuku nervous, and he began to do an investigation in the same way he did the time Momo was framed. So he began to walk again through the darkness to get answers, which turned out, since he found a lot of information which was quite useful to him, so he began to make a lot of plans for different situations. After the students found out about Momo's innocence and about her kidnapping, they decided to help Momo, and they began to look for a way to save her, something that the teachers were also doing, and soon a war broke out between the villains and the heroes, all because of the simple mistake of an academy. After several days had passed, Izuku and the UA teachers along with other heroes began to look for a way to find Momo. The first to find her was Izuku, who planned what he would do, and at the moment he did it, he mentally prepared himself for what he would do, while the heroes came to the same conclusion as Izuku about where their target was at the moment. The students of Class 1A of UA had also come to know how to find Momo, and they were preparing for the night in which they would attack in order to save their former classmate. After a few days, everything started to move everywhere. Izuku moved to the place of his attack and rescue. The heroes moved to be able to rescue, and the students did the same, but the one who was most determined to fulfill his mission was Izuku, which the villains also expected, since more than anything they only kidnapped Momo for Izuku, since he was the only danger in their plans because of his power, which was unknown, but his abilities were too dangerous. That night would be known as the night of the beginning and the end, not only because of the beginning of what could be said to be the toughest fight between light and darkness, but also because at that moment a man marked the entire future, in a future full of a fight against darkness where good would be greatly inspired by this person. As night fell over all of Japan and shadows began to move, Izuku, who was on top of a building, looked at a specific building while he waited while looking at a clock. But his wait was stopped when he saw movement not only below him, but in the building which would be attacked by him in a few minutes, and when he looked closely he noticed that it was his old UA class, and in the building were the heroes, which after looking for a while he noticed how they destroyed the place and entered, and at that the UA students took the opportunity to see if they could help, and seeing that Izuku just stayed waiting while he waited for them to get out of there, since he had placed certain things that would explode in a few minutes, so that the villains would get out of there, so that after a few more minutes the whole place would explode. While Izuku was waiting with the heroes, you could see how the hero Kamui Woods had everyone inside lying down until a black liquid appeared and took everyone there except Momo, who along with the heroes left only to see a guy with a destroyed face appear along with the other villains, who went into a purple portal, and seeing that the villain with the ugly face raised his hand and was going to speak, but received a kick in the face from Izuku, who had a completely calm face, but the man after seeing him could see how an anger which destroyed everything in its path silently was inside Izuku, which could only be seen through his eyes. AFO, it seems that Original Without has arrived at the place. While he was saying this, from a certain point, you could see how several reporters were recording everything that was happening. Momo Izuku. Momo shouted Izuku's name when she saw him, but he didn't turn to look at her and just stared at AFO, who looked at him with his ugly face, but Izuku could tell he was smiling. While the two looked at each other suddenly where the villains were before it exploded in a huge explosion. AFO, what an unexpected thing. Reporter, apparently the boy who left with the accused girl is in front of the villain who was considered number one at the time, who was thought to have defeated All Might. AFO, before defeating you I would like to know what your quirk is. Izuku just took something out of his pants, which were some knuckle dusters which he put on, and stayed in a relaxed position, while his eyes shone with strength and power. AFO, I want to hear your bones crack, so let's see if this is your size. After saying that, AFO launched an attack, throwing a punch at Izuku, who dodged it, and AFO threw a kick, which was dodged again. AFO, not bad kid, but now nothing will last against me. After he said that, it was noticed that his fists grew bigger and sharper, something that Izuku prepared himself for. AFO, meteoric fists. While saying that, many attacks were launched by AFO, who was somewhat surprised to see how all his attacks were dodged. Seeing that, AFO just smiled and made his leg covered by a golden aura and kicked in Izuku's direction, who dodged it by jumping while causing everything in his path to be destroyed. Izuku, it's my turn. Your techniques. My techniques take meteoric fists. After he said that, he copied exactly the movements that AFO did, only this time all the blows hit AFO, who was pushed back. Izuku, look. As he said that, Izuku's leg shone gold and he launched the same parry as AFO, which hit him in the ribs, causing him to fly towards the ground, where he began to crawl for a long time. All Might, he is giving AFO an even fight. Momo, amazing. While Momo was saying that, she covered her mouth with her hands. Reporter, this is incredible, he is facing that villain without any doubt. AFO after a while got up from the ground and began to approach Izuku, who had a small smile. Izuku, I see that you are surprised. No attack reaches me, that means creating me in his image and likeness. I am only a human, but with the eyes of the Lord God gave me his best weapon. AFO began to laugh quite loudly as he got into position while keeping one of his fists back as if charging an attack and spreading his legs somewhat apart. AFO, if you keep up with this. An energy could be seen concentrated in his fist, which he carried, which seemed to come from around him. AFO, try to do something with the fist that's a past. Izuku time. AFO never anticipated that Izuku's surprise turned into a smile when he saw the attack he would send after all, when he launched it faster than light, which surprised him not only that it had been copied but that it had also been faster than he. But the moment Izuku hit AFO, which hit his face, AFO's head twisted at a deadly angle, which at the moment when the power went away and all the time returned to normal, it could be seen how Izuku was behind AFO with his fist pointing forward as if he had landed a blow, while AFO had his neck completely turned. Izuku, I liked your ability, and with it I finish you off. But before anyone could say anything or anything happen, AFO spoke while leaving a few small laughs in his words. AFO, I don't see the hate in your eyes, why are you fighting? Izuku, I need a reason to protect everyone. AFO, you used to have anger in your eyes. Izuku, which was because of the attack on Momo, but I don't have anything to do with you. AFO, I see you are strong boy, but... While saying that, AFO's body began to release smoke as he became smaller, but you could see how the muscles were very attached to his body, defining them while he exuded an aura of power. AFO, now I see you surprised, I understand you're scared. Final form, the diamond in the rough, you're dead, tried to keep up with me. After AFO digested that, he launched himself against Izuku, who looked at him but without the slowness of before, to which he became more serious, thus dodging a right hand from AFO which revived a right hand from Izuku, but AFO launched a blow with his other arm which was dodged by Izuku, who only walked away with one step. But after that, a great and fast combination of blows began to be sent by each of the fighters, which was so fast that they left a residual image which was so much that it could even be seen through the cameras of the reporters who were recording everything. This great combination of blows lasted for at least 5 minutes, during which either of them stopped for a moment. After a few more seconds, Izuku threw himself back while you could see how his eyes were bleeding a little and his veins were standing out somewhat. Izuku, this is bad, I'm trying really hard. AFO, I see you on the defensive. While saying that, he was launching an attack which was dodged by Izuku, who hit him in the face with his fist, and then kicked him in the ribs, which gave rise to a new great combination of blows from the two, which were either dodged by Izuku or received but hardened by AFO. AFO, I only have to get one right. While thinking that, he hit Izuku in the face, who spat out some blood from his nose and mouth while his eyes were bleeding more. AFO, finally this is the straw that broke the camel's back. While saying that, he could see how Izuku was in a defensive position, while he looked at the ground where drops of blood were falling. Izuku, I can't use my eyes now. While saying that, she was looking at a great darkness which was the only thing she could see, but after a while she heard how Momo was the one crying since she was saying her name. Izuku, calm down, nothing's wrong, I'll protect you, I found you, Ra. AFO, Ra. Both AFO and Izuku launched into the attack, raising their right hand, AFO with an aura that was dark in color, while Izuku had a golden aura, which was due to the fact that he could still use part of his quirk, and it was the power of having copied quirk which he used, and combined all of them he could, like that of All Might that he had seen used before the battle, to which when both blows collided, Izuku deflected his blow somewhat, causing AFO's to hit him in the face, while his hit AFO in the chest, which made a great light appear in the place, and then a great explosion happened, which was followed by a great expansive slingshot. After the light went out and everyone could see what happened, everyone could see how Izuku had his hand in a punching position, while AFO's body was completely destroyed. Before anyone could do anything else, Izuku spat out some blood and then raised his fist towards the sky, leaving it there. After a few minutes, the sounds of the memory ranged out all over the place, but when the heroes approached Izuku, he had a shattered look, giving a sign of the damage his eyes received, but when they got closer they noticed that something very important had happened, and that it was that Izuku was dead. Momo began to cry when she saw that, and the heroes lowered their heads, as did everyone who was watching, whether from the battle site or from another place through a screen, but that feeling of sadness went away with a feeling of determination, not only to see how Izuku died standing up without kneeling, but to continue with a smile. All right, that boy was amazing. Endeavor, unfortunately, had to die. All right, save everyone from a great darkness. Endeavor, and the most surprising thing was that he didn't die kneeling and continued with a smile. All right. He is a true symbol. 13 Alternative ending. AFO, it seems that original without has arrived at the place. While he was saying this, from a certain point, you could see how several reporters were recording everything that was happening. Momo Izuku. Momo shouted Izuku's name when she saw him, but he didn't turn to look at her and just stared at AFO, who looked at him with his ugly face, but Izuku could tell he was smiling. While the two looked at each other suddenly where the villains were before it exploded in a huge explosion. AFO, what an unexpected thing. Reporter, Apparently the boy who left with the accused girl is in front of the villain who was considered number one at the time, who was thought to have defeated All Might. AFO, before defeating you I would like to know what your quirk is. Izuku just took something out of his pants, which were some knuckle dusters which he put on, and stayed in a relaxed position, while his eyes shone with strength and power. AFO, I want to hear your bones crack, so let's see if this is your size. After saying that, AFO launched an attack, throwing a punch at Izuku, who dodged it, and AFO threw a kick, which was dodged again. AFO, not bad kid, but now nothing will last against me. After he said that, it was noticed that his fists grew bigger and sharper, something that Izuku prepared himself for. AFO, meteoric fists. While saying that, many attacks were launched by AFO, who was somewhat surprised to see how all his attacks were dodged. Seeing that, AFO just smiled and made his leg covered by a golden aura and kicked in Izuku's direction, who dodged it by jumping while causing everything in his path to be destroyed. Izuku, it's my turn. Your techniques. My techniques take meteoric fists. After he said that, he copied exactly the movements that AFO did, only this time all the blows hit AFO, who was pushed back. Izuku, look. As he said that, he was noticed that Izuku's leg glowed gold, and he launched the same stop as AFO, which hit him in the ribs, causing him to fly to the ground, where he began to crawl for a long time. All Might is giving an even fight to AFO. Momo, amazing. While Momo was saying that, she had her mouth covered with her hands. Reporter, this is incredible, he is facing that villain without a doubt. AFO after a while got up from the ground and began to approach Izuku, who had a small smile. Izuku, I see that you are surprised. No attack reaches me. That happens because he created me in his image and likeness. I am only a human, but with the eyes of the Lord, God gave me his best weapon. AFO started laughing quite loudly as he got into position, while holding one of his fists back as if charging an attack and slightly separating his legs. AFO, let's see if you can keep up with this. An energy could be seen concentrating in his fist, which he carried and which seemed to come from around him. AFO, try to do something with your fist that you have surpassed. Izuku, the time. AFO never expected that Izuku's surprise would turn into a smile when he saw the attack he would send. After all, when he launched it, he was going faster than light, which surprised him, not only that it had been copied but also that it had been faster than him. But the moment Izuku's punch hit AFO, which hit his face, AFO's head twisted at a deadly angle, which at the moment when the power went out and all the time returned to normal, it could be seen as Izuku was behind AFO with his fist pointing forward as if he had given a punch, while AFO had his neck completely turned. Izuku, I liked your ability, and with it I finish you off. But before anyone could say anything or anything could happen, AFO spoke, while leaving a small laugh in his words. AFO, I don't see the hate in your eyes. Why are you fighting? Izuku, I need a reason to protect everyone. AFO, you used to have anger in your eyes. Izuku, which was because of the attack on Momo, but I don't have to do it towards you. AFO, I see you're strong boy, but... As he said that, AFO's body began to smoke as he became smaller, but you could see how his muscles were very close to his body, defining him more while he exuded an aura of power. AFO, now I see you surprised. I understand you are afraid the rough diamond has reached its final form. You are dead. Try to keep up with me. After AFO digested that, he launched himself at Izuku, who looked at him but not as slowly as before, and then became more serious, dodging a right hook from AFO, who revived a right hook from Izuku, but AFO threw a punch with his other arm, which Izuku dodged and only moved away with a step. But after that, a great and fast combination of blows began to be sent by each of the fighters, which was so fast that they left a residual image which was so much that it could even be seen through the cameras of the reporters who were recording everything. This great combination of blows lasted for at least 5 minutes, during which neither of them stopped for a moment. After a few more seconds, Izuku threw himself back while you could see how his eyes were bleeding a little and his veins were standing out somewhat. Izuku, this is bad. I'm trying really hard. AFO, I see you on the defensive. While saying that, he was launching an attack which was dodged by Izuku, who hit him in the face with his fist, and then kicked him in the ribs, which gave rise to a new great combination of blows from the two, which were either dodged by Izuku or received but hardened by AFO. AFO, I only have to get one right. While thinking that, he hit Izuku in the face, who spat out some blood from his nose and mouth while his eyes were bleeding more. AFO, finally this is the straw that broke the camel's back. While saying that, he could see how Izuku was in a defensive position while he looked at the ground where drops of blood were falling. Izuku, I can't use my eyes now. While saying that, she was looking at a great darkness, which was the only thing she could see, but after a while she heard how Momo was the one crying since she was saying her name. Izuku, calm down, nothing's wrong, I'll protect you, I found you, Ra. AFO, Ra. Both AFO and Izuku launched into the attack, raising their right hand, AFO with an aura that was dark in color, while Izuku had a golden aura, which was due to the fact that he could still use part of his quirk, and it was the power of having copied quirk which he used and combined all of them he could, like that of All Might that he had seen used before the battle, to which when both blows collided, Izuku deflected his blow somewhat, causing AFO's to hit him in the face, while his hit AFO in the chest, which made a great light appear in the place, and then a great explosion happened, which was followed by a great expansive slingshot. Note: here it changes and the story, so to speak, has a good ending. The shockwave happened and you could see how Izuku's body was launched towards the heroes while AFO's was launched towards some buildings, where he crashed, but very slowly he was able to get up with a very serious wound in his chest, which was not healing, but although they thought it would be something bad and it would never end. A laugh began to be heard and you could see how Izuku, who was lying on the ground, began to get up once again. AFO, what? Wait, your wounds are... Izuku, we are not that different. Your quirk steals quirks which you can use and combine. Mine copies the quirks which I use and combine. That is how we achieve things like combining earth and fire, thus creating lava. But tell me, what happens if you combine a sensory quirk with a copy quirk? AFO, don't tell me that. Izuku, you see, there's a difference between my quirk and your quirk, although yours can steal them and have them forever. Saying that, Izuku stood up and opened his eyes, which were bleeding quite a bit, but his body was clearly completely fine. Izuku, it has the disadvantage that you have to touch your enemy. In my case, I just have to see him. After that, a kind of ring of light came out of Izuku's body, which began to spread out over a long area around him. AFO, this is impossible. You are... Izuku, yeah, copying the quirks of hundreds, no, thousands of people for thousands around. AFO, but... Izuku, I said it before, we're not that different. You tried to destroy my world, you lost, now it's my turn. After that, Izuku raised his fist in the air, where it began to be wrapped in golden color. Izuku, you see, when I copied one of the hero's quirks, I had the All Might quirk, your biggest problem at the time, but I didn't know how to use it. This quirk is limited by percentages as it is not suitable for use, but now that is not the case. Colored particles began to surround Izuku's fist, which was golden in color, and began to enter Izuku's fist. Izuku, AFO, you don't deserve that name. After all, I have all the quirks you have and thousands around. I am all against one, but at the same time I am also one against all when fighting only against you. After saying that, Izuku prepared to attack AFO, who, seeing him, put all his power, everything he could gather, into his hand once again. Izuku, let's go there. After that, Izuku launched himself against AFO, who moved his arm back to hit Izuku and stop his blow, but the moment both blows collided, the golden and dark light collided again, but Izuku's voice could be heard throughout the place. Izuku, one for all broken limits. After saying that, Izuku's hand left the golden color that characterized it and took on a white color, which began to consume the dark color of AFO's hand. Izuku plus Ultra. After saying that, you could see how Izuku's white hand began to pierce AFO's black hand until at a certain point AFO's body was completely pierced, which caused a white energy laser to come out of AFO's body, which after a few seconds was completely made of white particles. After that, Izuku's arms stopped glowing white, and after that, all that could be seen was how Izuku fell to the ground, while his right arm could be seen as it was very black and was bleeding from all places. At that, Momo was the first to approach to see Izuku, and she hugged him and could feel how he was breathing, which is why she began to cry with joy knowing that Izuku was okay. All Might, he did it, Master, you have been avenged, Your death was not in vain. All for One has been defeated.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.